This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and today I have an interview with one of my most requested guests. We finally tracked him down. He's in Louisiana. He's wrestled for WWE, WCW, NWA, World Class, UWF in Japan. He's been everywhere. The one-man gang, also known as Akeem, the African Dream. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Hannibal, it's a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank you for having me on Hannibal TV. I've been a fan of this channel for a while. I've watched many great interviews you've done, and hey, I'm just happy and tickled pink to be able to be on here today.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And before I get into the questions, Jacques Rougeau and superstar Billy Graham both told me to say hi to you because I told them I was going to be doing an interview with you.
Oh man, that's really nice of you to relay that information. Both super guys, and I know you said Superstar is having a little health problems, and I wish him all the best. And Rougeau's are nothing but the nicest things to say about them guys. Total professionals all the way.
Yeah, Billy Graham told me that when you did that angle with him where you allegedly injured him, he didn't feel a thing.
Yeah, I'm the one-man gang is the one that put Superstar Billy Graham out of professional wrestling. That goes on my resume. Nobody else's.
Yeah, that was the end of his wrestling career, both in storyline and legitimately.
You are correct. He went to doing commentary after that, and they had to limp around. I believe he went in for a real operation, but we just, Vince went ahead and just gave me the privilege, I guess you say privilege or honor of being the man myself and Butch Reed and Slick of being able to say we put Superstar Billy Graham out of commission once and for all.
I understand that you were a wrestling fan all your life. Could you tell us a little bit about your childhood and watching wrestling? I think you were a fan of the Mid-Atlantic territory.
Oh, man, I was a huge fan of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. Some people refer to it as Jim Crockett Promotions, but to me, it was Mid-Atlantic. And, yeah, I was huge from a young age, and just watching it. We didn't have fancy cable TV, so it came on Saturday twice, one in the middle of the day and then one later in the evening, 11 o'clock or whatever. So it was a not to miss thing, and our small little auditorium would always carry Mid-Atlantic on Saturday nights, down in our Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium. So I was a regular person down there where you could get a decent seat for like, $5, $6, whatever. So yeah, I was a huge professional wrestling fan, big magazine person back in the day, because we didn't have YouTube and any of these fancy things like you got nowadays to keep up with the professional wrestling. So huge magazine person. I'd get caught in school trying to read my wrestling magazines instead of doing my schoolwork, and I would book my own matches. Didn't know what I was booking. I didn't know that's what it was, but I would, just make up my own matches on sheets of paper and things like that. Whereas most guys would have nice looking chicks on their wall, girls on their wall. I had wrestlers on my wall. So, and a matter of fact, one of the main ones was Superstar Billy Graham. I always loved his magazine covers because it was always bloody. That was my favorite magazines, the ones that was always the bloodiest ones. So yeah, I was a huge Mid-Atlantic, and all the way back, Nature Boy Ric Flair started in a t-shirt, had the tie-dye t-shirt and things like that before the fancy robes. So that's how basically I got interested in it through that. And any of those old school names back in those days, I was just gigantic. I can't even explain to you how much of a fan I was, and how when you go to see the event live, how they start with the preliminary and build it up over slowly, match by match, and then finally you take that little break before the main event. then you'd be all buzzing, talking with people and stuff, and then the bell would ring, and man, that place would explode, because it was main event time, and then whoever was in the main event, then you was like, then you just wait till next week, and they'd do another show next week, and it'd just keep going that way, so. And a few times I got lucky and got to go to Asheville, North Carolina. There was big shows. In Charlotte, North Carolina was a big show. Greenville, so. And then later on, just thanks to the stars or whatever makes things happen, I actually got to work for Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. Talking about a dream come true. Man, oh man, was that a dream come true.
With your size, did you play football or any other sports before you got into pro wrestling?
Well, I tried junior high. I didn't play high school. I played a couple of years in junior high school football, like 8, 9. But I just didn't have it, man. I didn't have the speed. I didn't have the stamina, I just didn't have it at all for football, So I just faded out of it and just started, following professional wrestling. I was already a fan before that, but then, once I decided this is what I want to do for a living after watching them kill each other live and in person, I used to watch Wahoo McDaniel and Johnny Valentine just basically just beat the crap out of each other. You could see the sweat coming off from the Wahoo chops and Johnny Valentine, with his big sledgehammer. And I was like, man, this is the greatest thing I ever seen in my life. So yeah, after that, everything I dreamed of was to be a professional wrestler, So, during school, they'd give you the little thing about what are you going to do with your life test or whatever. And I put down professional wrestler. Of course, everybody laughed and yeah, because back in the 70s, it wasn't a cool thing like nowadays. You watch wrestling, it's cool nowadays, but back then, you just wasn't cool if you watch wrestling. You was just basically like a redneck, which, that's what I am anyway, but still, it just wasn't a cool thing. So, yeah, well, football, I tried it, just wasn't for me. So, luckily, everything worked out in my favor in the long run.
How did you start training to be a pro wrestler? Because I read that you started when you were 17, which is pretty young. Was it difficult to find a way to get into the business?
Difficult for, if you was wrestling, for Mid-Atlantic or a major organization, yeah. But, I started with we call them outlaw groups back in the day. Now I guess they call them independents, where we didn't go through any commissioners, and we didn't really basically follow the rules. I ain't gonna say I didn't, because I was just a member of the show. I already had the size. So basically what happened, I just, got into it that way through some friends, and the first few matches just basically got the crap beat out of me. I guess they were testing you, and my whole elbow was just like black and blue from, just taking bumps. I didn't know what a bump was. I didn't know anything about the business at all. So it was basically just crawl in the ring and get the crap beat out of you a few times and see if you'd stick with it. So, I stuck with it. And as time went on, I learned and, kept on learning. Even after, years and years in the business, I was still learning. So, yeah, that's basically, and I started at 17 years old, which probably was illegal. But like I said, we were called outlaw wrestling at that time. So, yeah, I started at 17. So, a lot of guys started early. I think Terry Gordy started really young, maybe 16 or 17. So, back in those days, I believe a lot of people started young. I didn't have no college background of anything famous. Wasn't a big sports person, just from Spartanburg, South Carolina. If it wouldn't have been for professional wrestling, I'd probably still be there working at a factory or a wherever, which nothing wrong with that. But luckily, I got to live out my dream. A lot of people don't get to do that. Luckily, I was one that actually got to live out his dream. So thank goodness.
And I understand you started off as Crusher Broomfield. Where did you come up with that name?
Really what I started as, I was like, before I made it to Crusher Broomfield, I was just, they called me all kind of names. I'd wear a mask one night, one night I could be like Blue Angel, or I'd be Big George or George the Giant. I mean, before that, I could be anything basically. But then probably early 80s, 1980 or so, somewhere in that range, friend of mine was going to Kentucky to do TV tapings for ICW, which was International Championship Wrestling, that was owned mainly by the Poffos, Angelo Poffo, Leaping Lanny, and Macho Man, Randy Poffo, Randy Savage. And I just happened to jump in the car, and, I was asking them, did they have a spot open? So, yeah, luckily they had a spot open. So I took the ride with them. I wasn't booked on the show. I just took the ride with them to the show. So when I got up there, I was just hanging out in the back with the crew, all the guys and stuff. And Randy just asked one of the guys I was with, Chief Jay Eagle, asked him, who's that big guy you brought with you, And he goes, well, that's, so-and-so. Does he work? Well, yeah, he works. And, so they came over and talked to me about it and asked would I be interested in coming into International Championship Wrestling to work, full time, which I'd never worked anywhere full time like that. So, yeah, we worked, I said, sure thing. So, we worked it out, and, I had to go back to South Carolina and get what little things I had in order, and let my mom know about it, because my mom was a single parent, and I was her only kid. So that was kind of a tricky thing to tell her, hey, I believe I'm gonna, is it okay if I leave home and, start wrestling? So I went up there, and then they, for whatever reason, they come up with the name. It wasn't me. This was the Macho Man, and those up there come up with the name Crusher Broomfield, like a big country boy, a big redneck country boy. And they had a contract. Supposedly Macho Man had a contract on me that he was paying my sister's hospital bills. She was in a hospital with a disease, and he was supposedly paying the hospital bill. So the way the angle went is I was working for Macho Man, in his stable, and basically like a servant kind of thing. I would have to get the jackets and get his robes, and if I messed up, he'd slap me and do just crazy stuff like that. He made me get on and kiss his boots, and and then when I would start to stand up to him, he would be like, he'd pull the contract out, and hey, remember the contract I got. What happened to you, what happened with this, and like that. It was an angle. I didn't even have a sister, but it was all angle, and that's what I stayed up there for probably a good 2 years, working with them guys. Had Leaping Lanny Poffo, had Macho Man, had Angelo with their dad, had Bob Roop was there, Ronnie Garvin, had Cowboy Bob Orton, Pistol Pez Watley was there, so it was a pretty good group to learn from, being my first actual territory to work, for 2 years. I got to wrestle all these different stars, and then actually, learn, Macho Man, helped me tremendously, behind the scenes, giving me pointers on how to work a match and what to do, what not to do, and things like that. So just to hang out with him, see him do his interviews and things like that was like tremendous thing to be able to do. So yeah, I got to stay there 2 full years, and, not really making no money, of course, but they had TV, and had an actual territory and ran shows weekly. So, for me, it was like being in heaven. So I thought that was the greatest thing in the world.
Were you around at the time where Macho Man had his altercation with Bill Dundee? I know you probably weren't there, but it seemed like he was going a little nuts around that time with that whole incident where Bill Dundee, I guess, had to pull out a gun to protect himself.
Yeah, I was in the area, like you said, I wasn't at the actual thing that happened, but that was constantly. They was always on TV challenging, Dundee, or challenging Jerry Lawler to different type matches, or whatever. It was just, later on, I didn't know at the time, but later on, I'm thinking, after I learned the business a while, I'm thinking, why would you give your TV time, challenging this other group? All you're doing is giving them, giving them your TV time by even mentioning their names, you know. So yeah, at the time, I mean, constantly they were always challenging them to some type match or whatever. I don't know if they was, you know, honestly wanting to shoot with them or not, but I know this altercation was a shoot for sure. You know, I know that happened, but you know, I was never one to get involved in all that. I just wanted to wrestle and, you know, just enjoy myself and, you know, see what happened. You know, I was just me, basically. I was kind of a laid back kind of guy. I kind of stayed out of everybody's way.
How was Lanny in those days? He's a fairly nice guy, but he's a little eccentric. Was he helpful to you?
Oh yeah. Lanny was super helpful. We had a lot of matches, and yeah, he was like it's just hard to explain, you know, because you're in the ring and he's just giving you pointers and telling you things to do. But yeah, he was. I mean, you know, I don't know, but eccentric, I guess, you know, but work wise in the ring, I had no problems. I enjoyed, you know, even years later when we ran into each other again in WWF and whatever. But I never had any trouble at all with him. He was really easy to work with. At that particular time in ICW, you know, he was pretty well over as a babyface, pretty good. So our matches was pretty easy. It wasn't really very hard out there. So yeah, I had a great time with him. You know, he was really easy to work with.
Did you ever see him do his little trick that he did in the dressing room a couple times?
You know, I've heard of this little trick several times, but to be honest, I never witnessed it, and I don't believe I want to witness it. So, but you know, like I said, Lanny was, you know, always cool with me. I never had no problem with him. So whatever he did is, you know, other than that is all on him. You know, whatever you do is your business. I don't really care.
Yeah, apparently the groupies liked it, so I guess it helped them in some ways. You also went to the Florida territory in your younger days. Could you tell us about that and having matches with Dusty Rhodes there?
Yeah. Florida came after Mid-South Championship Wrestling, my first time in Mid-South. So, yeah, I went to Florida Championship Wrestling. So, Dusty I was in Mid-South working, you know, for Bill Watts, and he asked me would I be interested in coming to Florida to work for him, and heck yeah, I would. You know, who wouldn't want to go to Florida to work? Cause, you know, so yeah, I went down there, and they gave me a huge, huge push, you know, as a heel. So I got to work with him quite often. Got to work with Blackjack Mulligan quite often. Barry Windham was there. Mike Rotundo was there. Billy Jack was there. So, you know, they teamed me and Cowboy Ron Bass up, and, you know, so we got the tag team titles at one time, and I had the brass knuckles title that I'd won from Blackjack Mulligan at one time. So, I mean, at that time, Florida was pretty hot place. I don't mean temperature wise. I mean, you know, hot place meaning sellouts pretty much every night. They was doing huge business, and luckily I was right in the middle of it, you know, getting to work the top baby faces, because, you know, so they put me originally I was with J.J. Dillon, and that didn't, you know, that was just a short time. He left the area, and then they put me with another manager, Jim Holiday, and then ended up after that, I ended up going to Sir Oliver Humperdinck in the House of Humperdinck, and then I stayed there for a while, and Superstar Billy Graham came in, and we ended up doing a angle eventually where they turned me babyface. Dusty wanted me to turn babyface because I'd been there so long, you know, over a year as a heel, you know, top heel. So he felt it was time for me to turn babyface, which I did, and it worked. You know, he was pretty smart. He was a brilliant man about wrestling business. So it worked, and you know, I had a great time in Florida. It was like a vacation just about every day. All the towns except Miami, or if you had to go to the Bahamas or something like that, you know, everything was pretty close in. So it was like a vacation every day. So yeah, I loved it. I truly loved it. A lot of blood though. I mean, you had to, if you was in, on top down there, you might as well get ready to do a lot of bleeding and some gimmick matches, because Dusty loved gimmick matches. A lot of bull ropes, a lot of chain matches. I had some strap matches with Joe Lightfoot. Had barbed wire matches. I guess I don't even know if that's way before ECW even had barbed wire. They had barbed wire matches down there. I had those with Blackjack Mulligan. Any kind of gimmick match, cage, tape fist, falls count anywhere, just about any gimmick match you could dream up. They had it in Florida. So, and I was pretty much in every one of them, bleeding every night. So, I loved it. I loved every time I stepped in the ring. I loved it.
Blackjack Mulligan was known as a really tough guy. Did you ever see him in action outside of the ring?
No. I never seen him actually outside the ring getting involved with, if you're talking about a actual fisticuff, whatever. But I mean, I wouldn't have messed with the man. The man had hands like gigantic hams or whatever. His hands were gigantic, and I just remember one of the first times I worked him, I was pounding on him. I mean, I was, I worked pretty stiff because I'd come from Mid-South, and they're stiff style. They like it kind of stiff. Bill liked it stiff. So, and Dusty was kind of the same way, except with him, he didn't want it like real stiff. But Mulligan, I was pounding on him, and he was like harder, and so I'd hit him harder, and I'd hit him harder. He goes, yeah, now I feel it. So I finally was just pounding and pounding and pounding. He goes, yeah, now I'm coming. Oh, yeah. I'm like, holy cow, what have I got myself into here? But yeah, Mulligan was something else, man. That dude was like gigantic, even though I was 6'8", I still, even against him, I felt, I just felt small. But just being in the ring with these guys were like, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, these are the guys I grew up watching on TV, all year after year after year, and paying money to watch them live. And now I'm actually, in the ring against these guys. I was like a dream come true. I thought the alarm was going to go off and wake me up. Like I said, I've been the luckiest man alive to be able to wrestle in the era that I wrestled in,
Yeah, for sure. That was my favorite era. Billy Jack Haynes, you brought up. I've done a couple interviews with him. He was another guy that was known as a tough guy. How was it to work with him and be around him behind the scenes?
Let me tell you, Hannibal, all the guys behind the scenes and in the ring, I never had any trouble with anybody, to be honest. I don't know, it's just me. Maybe it's my personality being so laid back or just go along with whatever. But I didn't have any trouble with anybody. I never really, I never got any arguments with anybody. Well, whatever, if you want to do it, when we got our finish, whatever the finish was, let's figure it out. And we just do it the best we can. And hopefully we come out and have a good match, whatever it was. But honestly, behind the scenes, for me personally, I can't speak for anybody else, but just me personally, I never had any trouble with anybody, so, maybe it's just me, but, I've heard, stories about how he was and things, but I'm just saying for me personally, he was super, super guy. I didn't have any trouble at all. And he was over like a son of a gun. I'll give him that,
Yeah, he claimed in an interview with me that he was a high-level cocaine dealer in those days when he was working the Florida territory. Did you ever notice, I know you were never a partier or anything like that, but did you notice that he may have been the guy to go to if people wanted that stuff, or because you weren't a partier that was just something that you never noticed?
No, I would never notice anything like that. Like I say, what the guys did after shows or whatever, I have no idea. My deal was I just wanted to get in the ring and wrestle. And, then after I wrestled, I'd go to wherever I had to go. If I was back home, I went back home. I didn't go to the bars. I didn't hang out with these guys. I mean, that's just the way I am. I was never a hangout type person. I wanted to do my job, my wrestling job and just get on out of there, So, like I say, whatever these guys did after the fact, after the matches or whatever, I have no idea. I went through my whole career and didn't know half the guys' shoot names. I just called them. Everybody had a working name. That's what I always went by until the internet. I didn't know what anybody's shoot names was. To me, it was all just whoever they were. Blackjack Mulligan, Barry Windham, whoever. It was all just the work names.
Was Kevin Sullivan in the Florida territory when you were there?
Yeah, he came in a little later, and we got together, and I ended up with him for a small little bit, and had the old golden spike or whatever, hitting people in the heart with it, and bloodying people up and things. Yeah, he was there. We had some tag team matches, barbed wire tag team matches. We had some double bull rope matches and cage matches together, and then when I turned babyface, I had some matches against him as me being the babyface and him being the heel. And so, yeah, he was there for sure. He had a big part of it. One thing I remember for sure is we were at the Eddie Graham Sports Center in Orlando, where they used to do this. I think it was the Sunday shows. And we were there before the show, we had to get there at a certain time, and we were all sitting around, and Eddie Graham was like, on the mother, we were all sitting out there, me, Kevin, I think Eddie Graham was out there, and he goes, on the marquee, Kevin, it says professional wrestling, kind of making a point to me, and Kevin Sullivan goes, Eddie, look at this man. I mean, he is a walking gimmick. You can't be nothing but a gimmick if you're him. He can't be a professional wrestler. He's a gimmick. Look at him. So I always kind of stuck, remembered, Eddie Graham was like, it's professional wrestling. So yeah.
What were your thoughts when you heard about Eddie Graham committing suicide? Were you surprised when you heard about that?
Man, I'm surprised when I hear anybody committing suicide, whether it's him or, if I ain't mistaken, Mike Graham also. I mean, anybody, when I hear somebody commit suicide, I'm surprised. I don't care who they are. I'm like, wow, how bad is it that you got to, take your life? I don't understand that, because I enjoy getting up every day, no matter if I'm not doing anything or if I, whatever. Even when I had a regular shoot job, I still enjoyed getting up every day. So I just don't understand, I don't know what causes it. And I don't know, yeah, for sure. I was shocked by that, and anybody else.
I understand he was known as one of the best finish guys in the business. Would he give you finishes directly, or was it usually someone like Dusty or Kevin that would pass his finishes along to you?
No, it was always the somebody that whoever's had the book was usually Dusty or somebody like that, or if we was that's who the finishes came through. But we would usually just get it from a referee, because we were never in the same dressing rooms. Usually we were usually split apart in Florida, so we would usually get it from a referee. And our referee, usually if I was in the main events with a gimmick match or something, the referee would be Bill Alfonso, who you talked with not too long ago. But yeah, he would be the main referee that would be passing finishes back and forth, and some of them were pretty involved finishes. I mean, Dusty kind of like was from the Bill Watts, school of finishes, because there would be like some in finishes would take 3 or 4 minutes. It'd be like way involved stuff. It was just crazy.
And when did you actually start doing the one-man gang gimmick, and who came up with the idea for that?
Okay, let me think. Well, the one-man gang, when I left, I was in, like we talked about earlier, I was in ICW working for the Poffos, and the big cat, Ernie Ladd, came in. I guess he was friends with Angelo, maybe. I'm not sure, but he agreed to come in and work against me. At that time, I'd already turned babyface. So the big cat, Ernie Ladd, came in to work me in several matches up in the Kentucky area up there. And he was working for Cowboy Bill Watts. So he came in up there. We had our matches, and so he went back to Mid-South, and I guess he told Bill about me, and that's how that came about. They got in touch with the Poffos, and they started bringing me in. They would fly me into like wherever the shows were. If it was here in Baton Rouge, they would fly me in, and my manager, who would be my manager, Skandor Akbar, would pick me up at the airport. The show would already be started. So what they would do, they'd sneak me in the back, and then the main event, whatever the main event was, say it was Dusty against somebody or whoever, and they would have a spot in for me to run in, and I would run in. I'd do a run in, and I would just put the boots to whoever the babyface was. It could have been Dusty, it could have been Ted DiBiase, it could have been Dick Murdoch, whoever it was. I would just lay them out, give them a 2 or 3 big splashes, and they would wheel them out on their little stretcher and take them out of the building that way. And they had cameras there filming this as it went along, so it was being played back on TV, which I didn't, at the time I didn't know, because I was going back to work, at Poffos. And then finally, when I came in full time, we did, they brought me in and we did TV, and Ernie Ladd had the Samoans, Afa and Sika, under contract managing them, and Akbar, he had them, and he says Ernie Ladd stole them. So we did a gimmick where we jumped Ernie Ladd, and the Samoans turned on him, and I come running out, and they stretched his leg across the bottom rope, and I gave him a splash across his knee and took his knee out, and different. I was just doing some dastardly things. Didn't have a name, and I didn't even have a name yet. Basically, the commentary, Boyd Pierce, and they would be like going, "We don't. Who is this man? This giant man that Skandor Akbar has brought in?" And this went on a couple of weeks, and finally, I don't know if it's Boyd Pierce or who it was, but one of them just started calling me One Man Gang, saying he's like a one man gang. He can't be stopped. He's a one man gang. So that kind of stuck. I mean, I didn't come up with the name. I'll admit, it wasn't me. So. But it stuck, and then from then on, they started just calling me, One Man Gang, and from then on, that's what I went as, from after that, from on to the other territories. That's the name I continued with. Thank goodness. I mean, how important a good wrestling name is now. Back then especially. Nowadays you can get away with being called John Smith or whatever, but. In those days, you needed a good, solid wrestling name, so I was lucky in that aspect.
Did you already have the mohawk by that time and the biker style outfit, or is that something that a promoter told you to develop?
No, not at all. Back then, I had the long hair. I had like really, really long hair. I had the full beard, had a great big giant beard. And but the mohawk came about when I went to World Class Championship Wrestling, better known as the Von Erichs, Texas, or whatever you want to say. My manager, Playboy Gary Hart, came up with that idea. So he came up with the mohawk. He came up with the denim jacket. He came up with the idea of the Halsted Street, Chicago, Illinois gimmick. He came up with the idea for me to wear the big logging chain and different things like that. So all those ideas were Playboy Gary Hart. I just took those ideas and made it my own basically, and went from there. From then on, that's I was always known from Halsted Street, Chicago. So all that credit goes to Playboy Gary Hart.
You're very fortunate. You worked with Eddie Graham, Gary Hart, and Bill Watts, 3 of the top geniuses ever in the history of wrestling, as well as Kevin Sullivan. No wonder you were so successful.
Hey, like I said, I was just, I just been the luckiest man alive to be in that era, not just because of those guys, but just because of everybody. I mean, it don't matter who they were, up and down the card. I mean, back in the day when I went to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, I I mean, to a normal person, it doesn't mean anything. But when I got to meet somebody like Johnny Weaver, I mean, that was like a thrill of my life. This is Johnny Weaver, man. You don't know how many times I've seen this man wrestle in person and put the Weaver sleeper on somebody. Or when I got, I mean, I was actually after a show one night, I kind of showered and whatever, and they was taking the ring down, and I was walking across the floor. I believe it was a gymnasium, but I was walking across the floor. And one of the ring guys, he was like giving orders. I guess he's the head guy, and I stopped and looked at him. I went over. I said, "Are you Klondike Bill?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Man," I shook his hand. I was like, I mean, most people don't understand, but man, growing up, when you watch that week after week after week, and these are the guys you saw: Klondike Bill, Johnny Weaver, Swede Hansen, Johnny Valentine. When I finally got to meet him years later, even though he was crippled, still I got to, this is Johnny Valentine, man. What are you talking about? This is the greatest thing ever. Andre the Giant, any of those guys, man. It didn't matter who it was to me. It was like waking up on Christmas morning and have the greatest Christmas present you could imagine to meet these people, and actually be in the ring against some of them, I mean, it's like, wow, this is unbelievable.
Are you aware that Klondike Bill has become kind of a legend on the internet in recent years because Tony Schiavone has told a lot of these stories about Klondike Bill and panties and all kinds of stuff? Do you have any stories like that?
No, I didn't. I had no idea about it. Don't tell me that Klondike Bill was wearing panties. I don't even want to destroy that.
Apparently, he likes used panties. He liked to take them and smell them. And
stop it, Hannibal! You're killing me. I can't take it. You're destroying one of my heroes. Stop.
And for UWF, I mean, that was one of the greatest. It's one of my favorite territories to watch. What was it like, the travel there, and the fans were crazy, and the hard hitting style that they did? What was it?
Yeah. The wrestling style was pretty stiff. I mean, like I said before, Bill Watts, pretty much, it was pretty stiff. I'm not going to say it wasn't, and the travel was pretty, for me, it was fine. I loved it, I loved all territories. I loved getting in that vehicle and driving to a town and have some of the guys in the car. And, by the time you got there, you done booked the whole territory and fired about half the people. But for UWF, well, it started as Mid-South, and then years later he changed it to UWF, which is Universal Wrestling Federation. I guess he was trying to keep up with the WWF. He thought maybe that name would sound better, and he started spreading out a little bit more. We would go to California. We would do shows in New York or wherever, Boston area, things like that. Instead of staying in his own backyard, he started trying to spread out, but work-wise, it was a full load. I mean, it was 7 days a week. You're somewhere every night. So yeah, it was brutal. Luckily, I was still pretty young at the time, and I didn't have any major injuries at the time. And all the guys there were, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and DiBiase. All these guys, man, they're professionals, even though they could be we all were a little snug. We just wasn't out there crippling each other, but the fans believed, they believed what they saw, we're like, we would, for me as a heel, I was, the heel, of course. So I don't know how many times I've come out of arenas and, something be wrong with your car, have a flat tire, somebody cut your tires. I've had them, bust my windshield out before, and, just crazy stuff. I don't know how many times I've been jumped at just at the arena. It was so bad in New Orleans at the old downtown Municipal Auditorium. When you was in, like if I was in the main event against Junkyard Dog or something, back in the day, what I would do was I would pack my bag, have everything packed, and have it in the automobile. and my wife would have the vehicle backed up to the back door. And as soon as the finish was, whatever the finish was, I would just leave straight from the arena, straight down the aisle, fight your way out the building and straight out the back door and jump in your vehicle and get out of there. Because if you didn't get out at that particular time, you was going to be, your vehicle would be demolished and possibly you be demolished. Because once the show was over, those policemen, I don't know, they kind of just went their own way once that final bell rang. So just for safety wise, you had to get out of that building. A lot of buildings, not just there, but Florida also, and even over in Texas, world class, same exact way, man. And fans, they believed whatever, if you was hurting one of the Von Erichs, or if you was hurting Junkyard Dog, or whoever happened to be the babyface, them fans believed it. And they were out to hurt you. I'm talking about, this is before they started checking people for knives and, having stuff thrown at you. I don't know how many pounds of chewing tobacco I've had thrown on me, how many gallons of beer has been thrown in my face. I mean, if you're going to hit me with a beer, at least tell me to open my mouth, so I can get me a little swig, and just crazy stuff like that. Here I am bleeding like all over the place out of my head, and they're spitting tobacco on me. And it's amazing I didn't get some kind of disease and just died from some kind of disease from all this stuff. But yeah, it was a crazy time, and I wouldn't trade it for $1 million. Well, maybe $1 million, but I mean, like I say, I was the luckiest man alive to be able to do that, because I dreamed of it so much growing up. And then to actually be out there and these people hate you that much that they will, they want to, bust your windshield out or cut your tires or whatever, I mean, that's an amazing feeling to be able to control people that way.
Do you think with modern wrestling that there could ever be a heel like that anymore, that had so much heat that fans literally wanted to attack them with the way that they kind of don't kayfabe very much anymore? And it's hard for fans to really buy into angles these days. But do you think someone could come along that could bring it back to that, or is it too late?
My own personal opinion of it, I believe it's too late. I don't believe you'll ever see, heels like that nowadays, from the 70s or whatever. I mean, I don't believe you'll ever see that again. But, I mean, nowadays, I mean, I don't know. Back in my day, I mean, you couldn't even get in the dressing room if you was like the Coca-Cola man bringing a soda pop to a wrestler or whatever. You couldn't even get in the dressing room. So, I mean, nowadays you go to a show and there's like hundreds of people in the back. You don't know who's who. You don't, So I don't know, man. Even in WWF days, man, it was the same way. It had so many people behind the scenes, and so no, I don't believe at all that you could have a serious heel heat like that anymore. Nowadays, everybody and their brother is a wrestler. If I'm at a signing, I don't know how many people has come up and say, "Yeah, I wrestle," So basically, you get you a pair of boots and some tights or whatever, you're a wrestler. So, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, a lot of the larger than life characters are gone now. They're few and far between.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Do you have any tips for being a heel for any of the wrestlers watching?
Well, the problem nowadays is you have your character's pretty much built for you, so you can't just go out there and be what you think you should be. I mean, like the WWE performers are that, like, they want to be called performers. I was always a professional wrestler. I was a wrestler. I wasn't no performer. But yeah, their characters are pretty much, they got a certain way they have to be, and that's what they have to be. Luckily, when I was in WWF, it wasn't near that strict. I mean, with if I would have had to memorize 2 sheets of written lines, you just might as well just go ahead and fire me, because there's no way I could memorize lines. I just couldn't do it. I don't see how they do it. To be honest, I don't see how you memorize lines and go out there and actually give a good solid promo and be trying to remember what you have to say. I just don't see how they do it, But like I say, if I had to do it nowadays or even back then, you didn't just have to fire me, because I couldn't have done it. Same with the matches. These guys, man, they lay out matches step by step. I mean, a 20-minute match, and they laid out the whole match. Basically, I've seen them in the back before, at independent shows, and they'll be there for 2 hours talking over a match, and I'm like, good gosh. I mean, I'm like, for me, maybe a beginning, maybe, and of course the finish. Everything in between, unless they have something really special they want to do, everything in between, it was always the heel's call. It was always, back in the old school days, the heel called the match. How that came about, I don't know, but we was always taught that the heel calls the match. So, but yeah, I'd have a beginning and the finish. Anything in between that, just play it however it went.
And as far as working with the Junkyard Dog in UWF, how did you like being in the ring with him? Because I understand once he started having his drug issues and stuff, it could be pretty difficult some of the nights.
Yeah, well, Hannibal, he wasn't the easiest man to work with, but he was over so big, I guess, when you're over that big, you don't have to be the easiest man to work with. All he has to do, especially in Mid-South at that particular time, was just look out at the crowd, and the crowd would be right there with him, like they used to have this chant down here, like in New Orleans, especially, is a who dat gonna beat that dog, who dat? And the whole building would be chanting that, who dat gonna beat that dog? So, of course, it wasn't me. I would always take the thump every night, for the 1, 2, 3, unless we was doing a gimmick finish, which if you did a gimmick finish, you might as well be ready to fight the whole building. So, but yeah, he wasn't easy to work with at all. He had his limitations, and you basically, kind of had to work around his limitations, and just try to keep the match going, the best you could do, so that was even later in WWF. I had quite a few matches with him too, and same situation, it was just he just wasn't very mobile on his feet, but he didn't have to be very mobile when you're over, so it all worked out in the long run.
Yeah, I heard Lanny Poff. Well, actually, Lanny told me directly that he was the reason Terry Funk quit WWE was because he got sick of wrestling Junkyard Dog.
Yeah, Jimmy Hart told me that story one time. That Terry Funk was programmed with Junkyard Dog, and they were at the hotel or something after they had so many matches, and Terry Funk, got up and said, "Jimmy, I'm going home. I can't take it no more." And Jimmy Hart was like, Terry, Jimmy with that high voice, Terry, don't do it, Terry. And Terry like, I can't take it no more, Jimmy, I'm going home. And he went to the elevator and went down and went to the airport and went home. And that was the end of Terry Funk.
Is it true Terry Funk got you a movie role in a Hollywood film at one point? I think John Ritter was in the film with you.
Well, you got some good information there, Hannibal. I don't know where you get all this stuff, but it is true. I was, this is years later, and I was just here at the house. Telephone rings, and it's Terry Funk. I couldn't believe it, And he said, there's a little movie role. It wasn't a big part. That may be why he didn't want to do it, because it was just a little small little part. And he said, I want to offer it to you if you'd be interested in doing it. And I said, well, heck yeah, I'd be interested in doing it. So yeah, for sure. He got me the part. And, I went up to, up there in Canada, wherever where they do movies up there, and spent about 3 or 4 weeks up there just goofing off, basically. The director really I guess he liked me, so he kept me on the payroll. So yeah, it had John Ritter was in it, and the lady best known for Mork and Mindy, Pam Dauber. She was like his wife in the movie. The storyline is, the name of the movie is Stay Tuned. The storyline is John Ritter character was a big TV freak. He loved TV, so he purchased a cable TV satellite system. But what he didn't know is he purchased it from the devil. So as it goes on, he gets sucked into him and his wife get sucked into the satellite dish, and they have to overcome different challenges, in hell to be able to get back out of the satellite dish to return back home to their families. And one of the obstacles is a wrestling match between myself and another lady. We were the, world champions of hell. They had us like with some big horns, red horns and things like that. And we had a tag team wrestling match, and it really worked out. John was like crazy, man. He wanted to do all his own stunts. He was like, man, I would love to, I want to do this stuff. But of course, the director, he wasn't going to allow that to happen. But John did a couple of things. I gave him a nice airplane spin and a couple of little tosses and a couple of good hammers in the corner, and ended up that Pam Dauber's character ended up whacking me with the announcer's microphone and knocking me out. So they win the match, and then they disappear and go on to their next challenge. So, yeah, that was a good time, though. I had fun up there. I kind of wished I would have stuck with that little gig and kind of got more, try to get a little more into it. But when you live in Louisiana, you don't want to it's kind of hard to do if you're not actually in the area where they do that kind of stuff, But yeah, that was a good little gig, good payday and super nice people. Captain Lou Albano was there. He was the announcer for the show. So I hung out with Captain Lou for a couple of 3 weeks. And so, yeah, that was, you got your information correct wherever you're getting it from.
How did you like Captain Lou? I understand he was a little bit of an alcoholic and could be very entertaining.
I mean, Captain Lou was just, he was just Captain Lou. That's all I can say. I didn't really I didn't see him all messed up, maybe because we was doing the film or whatever, but he was still pretty little eccentric, even if he was being himself, with the darn rubber band things hanging out of his cheek and all that. That was kind of, I didn't even realize he was there. And I went down to the restaurant to eat, and he was in the restaurant. And one man gang, come over here and say with Captain Lou Albano. Oh, so yeah, we hung out together, so that was cool, man.
Do you have a Dusty impression? You seem pretty good at impressions.
No, I don't do Dusty too good. I don't have the lisp. A lot of guys have that really good lisp. I don't really have a really good lisp.
And Dick Murdoch was in Mid-South. I think you wrestled him a few times. He's a bit of a controversial character. How did you get along with him?
I got Captain Redneck, Dick Murdoch. I got along fine with him. I mean, he was another character, you didn't know what he was going to do in a match, but he was from that same, Dusty Rhodes school and those guys. So yeah, you didn't know what he was doing. He would come out, he started the Marine gimmick, so he carried a backpack out. You never knew what could be in the backpack, so he'd carry an entrenching tool, which is a small little shovel. He'd carry a 6-pack of beer, whatever. It didn't matter, so every night you went out to the ring with him, anything could happen. So you had to be prepared for pretty much anything. But the fans, they ate it up like it was candy. They loved him and loved the gimmick. And if you was going against him, you was just a hated person. And I just happened to be the hated person.
As far as drinking in the back, I know you were never a drinker. I know Andre seemed to always be allowed to drink in the back. Would a guy like Dick Murdoch be allowed to drink before his match in UWF if he wanted to?
I don't, before they got to the arena, I don't know what went on. But no, at the arena, they wasn't allowed at the arena. Through my whole career, the only person I've ever seen drink in the actual dressing room was Andre the Giant. And in WWF, they would bring in the big round container that you'd see Gatorade and stuff in at the 7-Eleven stores or whatever when you walk in. And they would have wine bottles all shoved down into ice. And, he would get there like really early and start drinking wine, and whoever was there that was a good card player, card or cribbage. When Harley Race came in, when he started in WWF, him and Harley would play that cribbage game with a little, I don't know what you got, the little pin thing, so many points you move around or whatever, and he would sit there all night till his match, drinking and playing cards, go out and do his match and come back and continue the game until he got ready to leave. And then he would, they always took care of him. He had his little keeper and had a special van for him to get around in and things like that. So, hey, he's Andre the Giant. What can you say? That was a true legend, was Andre the Giant.
Weren't you involved in a Superdome match with Andre at one point in Mid-South?
Yeah, I was. I wrestled Andre quite a few times, but yeah, that was my first Superdome extravaganza match. It was me. I mean, I was like probably 20 years old right after leaving International Championship Wrestling. So it was me and Harley Race against Andre the Giant and Dick Murdoch at the one of the Superdome extravaganza matches. That was my first time at the Dome. So you imagine me. I mean, here I am, a 20-year-old punk kid, and I'm stepping in the ring with these guys. I mean, I was like scared to death. I was terrified, but they all helped me get through it. And I don't remember what the finish was. I'm sure I probably lost the fall, but whatever. I mean, just to get in the ring with them guys, my gosh, Harley Race, are you kidding me? I mean, to me, the greatest world champion ever. I mean, better than Ric Flair. I mean, Harley Race could do anything and everything in the squared circle. So he was always one of my heroes, man. Yeah, shoot. I got to hang, never got to wrestle him personally, but I got to team up with him quite a bit, in Japan and different places. I teamed up with him, in WWF. So, man, that was like a dream come true. Harley, I remember I'd go to the auditorium when he was the world champion way back in the 70s, and he would come in with the world title and defend the world title, So, man, he would take that bump where he'd do that backward flip over the turnbuckle. I was just amazed. I was like, holy cow, that's incredible. I wished I could do that, But, yeah, that was my first big-time match, I guess you'd say.
I actually saw your entrance with Harley Race on YouTube a couple days ago, where he's actually doing the Jive Soul Bro dance as well. Did that take much convincing, or did he just decide, hey, I'm going to dance?
Man, I saw that video. I had no idea he did that. I was like, we were I believe it was on WWF. I believe it was in Italy. I'm not sure what city, Milan or one of those Italian cities. I don't know, but yeah, I had no idea he was doing it, and but there was no prearranged thing saying, hey, won't you do this, Harley? I mean, I would never go to the man and say, Harley, won't you do Akeem dance or anything? Are you crazy? I mean, there's no way I'd say that, but it wasn't prearranged. He just did it. I had no idea, and I finally, after all these years, 40 years later, I saw a video. I about fell out in the middle of the floor when I saw that. So yeah. Yeah, it wasn't prearranged.
Did you ever get the chance to drive with him? Because I understand he was a very scary guy to drive with.
No, I was never that brave. I was, I care for my life. Like I said, I want to wake up every day. I don't want to be out there doing 100 miles an hour, but when we were in Florida, there was a couple of times where he would like run up behind us and bump us in the bumpers and things like that. That's kind of crazy in itself, but yeah, he was known for his fast driving skills, I guess. I don't know if it's a skill, but yeah, he was kind of crazy. That's for sure. Ain't no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a skill, especially to do it while drinking. But a couple of times, exactly. Serious car accidents.
Yeah, exactly right.
Now, as far as Japan, you mentioned Japan. You actually teamed with Bruiser Brody over there in Japan at one point. What was that like?
Oh man, that was spectacular. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, get to team up with Bruiser Brody. I mean, this is before, Texas. It was before WCCW, you know. So yeah, just to get to go to Japan was spectacular to me. I mean, I'm like, I'm a little kid from Spartanburg, South Carolina, population, I don't know, back then, a couple thousand people, you know, and here I am going to Japan. Are you crazy? I didn't even, back in my day, I couldn't even spell Japan. And here I am getting to go over there, you know, and actually wrestle. But yeah, oh my God, it was unbelievable teaming with that man. That man is like, you know, I mean, when you say a machine, he was a machine and a half when he was in Japan. And in the States, it may have been a little different, but in Japan, I could see where, you know, he earned his money over there. There's no doubt about that. He earned his money, and shoot, I wasn't going to try to keep up with him over there. That's for sure, you know. So, man, he was over like a son of a gun. I mean, it was crazy. Especially those at that time in Japan. You know how people are. You know, even now, I guess they're still pretty reserved people. But man, he come out there swinging that chain all crazy and huffing and puffing and kicking, and it was like an honor if he hit one of them. You know, it was like a badge of honor if he punched one of them or something like that. And I remember the first night I teamed up with him. I don't remember who he worked against, but first night I teamed up with him, and he said, "Follow me, kid. Just do what I do." So he went out the door, stomping and huffing and puffing, and you know, my vision's not the best vision in the world, so I'm just trying to find my way to the ring, you know, because people are everywhere. I mean, when he went out, you know, out the door, it's like Godzilla or something. People just the building just goes crazy, and so I'm just trying to make my way to the ring. I get in the ring, and there's no Bruiser Brody. I turn around and look up into the stands, way up high in the stands. He's up in the middle of the stands, you know, up there swinging his chain and kicking people and just throwing stuff around. And I'm in the middle. I'm in the ring waiting, you know. So I'm like, holy cow. Then during the match, he said, "Watch this." So he took the Japanese wrestler. He threw him in. He jumped up and drop kicked him. Man, I thought he about took the dude's head off. I mean, that drop kick was so solid. It was unbelievable. I'm like, holy cow, what have I got myself into? But you know, he made the big money. He did what you know, he was a machine. That's all I can say. And same with Stan Hansen. I had the honors of teaming with Stan Hansen in Japan also. So, you know, the team with those two guys in Japan especially, you know, that's like, I mean, heck, I could have ended my career right there and been happy.
Did you get any offers to stay over in Japan, similar to Brody Hansen and Steve Williams and some of those guys? Because it seems like you would have been huge there had you had the opportunity to stay and really make a name for yourself.
You know, I didn't shoot. I don't know about the offers, but I just didn't really want to do it. You know, it just wasn't. You know, it wasn't my thing, I guess. I mean, I'm more of a homebody. I like the, you know, territory wise, you could work and come back home to your house or whatever. You know, you wasn't gone for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks at a time over there. Yeah, the money may have been better, you know. I mean, especially if he was making Bruiser Brody or Stan Hansen money, you know, which I know I wouldn't have been making. There's no way, because like I said, those guys were machines. I was nowhere near that. I mean, I was still, you know, green as grass. I had no idea what was going on over there. All I knew over there was everybody kept trying to suplex me. That's all that kept happening. They grabbed me and want to suplex me over and over and over. And them guys just told me, man, you got to sit down on them dudes. You can't let them be throwing you around. Sit down on them. If they don't want to sit down on you, knock them upside the head, you know. So, but that just wasn't for me. I mean, I had a great time over there. It's a great experience, but it just wasn't my type of thing, you know.
Did the Japanese mafia ever take you out for a sponsored dinner or to take you to a massage parlor or anything like that?
You know, not me personally. I know, you know, like I said, Bruiser and them guys, they had their sponsors. You know, I didn't have that I know of. I didn't have a sponsor, you know, because, you know, I was just a regular wrestler from the States. You know, I really didn't have a name for myself at that particular time or anything. So, you know, I got actually booked in there through Dory Funk Jr. You know, he was he kind of was booking talent at one time, so I got booked through him to get to go there. So, you know, I mean, you know, I didn't get to hang out with no sponsors or no, you know, any mafia people. I don't know about the other guys. You know, I hung out with the whatever guys was there. You know, they brought in some Mexican guys or whoever happened to be there. You know, Cyclone Negro was there with me on a tour. You know, we hung out, had a good time, and had a Mexican wrestler called Pyrita, had an eye patch over one eye. You know, we hung out. You know, couldn't talk very good together, but we still hung out. You know, just things like that. Terry Gordy was there. You know, which you know, he was a big star there, but we hung out together. But mainly, I pretty much kind of stayed by myself. I just go walking around, you know, just explore the area, and I'd try to go to one of their, you know, areas, temple or something like that, you know, or find me a good, you know, noodle place, eat some noodles or whatever, you know, and then, you know, just get on the bus and do what you got to do, you know, take your little 9-hour ride on the bus and go to the next little town, you know. But it was an experience. You know, luckily, like I say, it's just another part of my resume.
Did you ever meet?
What about you? What about you, Hannibal? Did you make it over to Japan?
They're too afraid. I mean, I beat AJ Styles when he was.
You're a shooter, though, so that's the problem. I was always a worker. You known as a shooter.
Well, I did defeat AJ Styles when he was New Japan champion. So I think that they know I'm better than any of their wrestlers. So they're a little bit afraid of me, as you said. But speaking of shooting, did anyone ever try to shoot on you in a match? You mentioned
never. I mean, we worked. The only time I ever got somebody try to shoot on me was in WWF. Me and Slick was taking on Hulk Hogan at a dark match at one of the TV tapings, I think up in North New York, Birmingham or Binghamton or one of those New York towns. And I got in the ring, Slick was in the ring, and this kid jumped in the ring before Hogan got out. Like I said, I have bad vision, so all I could see was a blurry figure. I don't know what was going on. And this kid run over and tried to double leg dive me, and me weighing 400 pounds, all I did was just squash him. I just went down and squashed him to the mat, you know, until security got in there and dragged him out. Slick was putting the boots to him. Slick was kicking him, hitting him with the cane, every which way, but I just squashed him down, and they dragged him out. And then years later, I heard that he actually got a job in professional wrestling as Roadblock or some name like that in WCW. And what happened that night, according to, you know, the story I got, was his buddies had talked him into jumping the biggest guy on the card, and they had signed you to a contract. You jumped the biggest man there, and just happened to be that I was the biggest man there that night, you know. So he jumped in the ring on me. Luckily, he just double leg dived me, tried to, and no weapons were involved, no knives or anything like that, you know. So it all Hogan came out of the dressing room, his music started, and he was like in mid-rip, you know, he was in mid-rip of his T-shirt and saw what was going in the ring. He stopped, and when the security dragged the dude out of the ring, it just kind of like, you know, it just picked up from right there, like you'd mash a pause on the video or something. He just continued ripping his shirt, and music started, and he just came on in the ring. We had our little match, and I took the leg drop, and, you know, rest is history.
Very interesting. And of course, you've already mentioned a couple of times your time in the Dallas territory, the Von Erichs. What was it like working for them, and who brought you into that territory?
Dallas was a super place to work. I enjoyed it. Same reason as Florida, real easy towns, not too many far towns to go to until you went down to West Texas, you know, if you had to go to El Paso or, you know, down in that area. But it was pretty easy. You had the same towns every week. You know, you had Sportatorium, Dallas. Then you had Fort Worth was easy. You had, you know, little spot shows here or there. So, and the way I got into it was I was in Florida Championship Wrestling. and I was a baby face, and I just worked a little angle with the Russians down there, Jim Neidhart, them guys. They were going as Russians, and Mask, White Mask, Angel, David Sierra. They had jumped me and cut my hair. Like I said, I had the long hair, so they cut my hair, and all that. So I'd cut a nice little promo on them. But I had to do a tour of Japan, so I left Florida and I went and did my tour. I think it was like a 3 or 4 week tour of Japan. So when I came back into Florida, I asked for my starting date, and while I was gone, Michael Hayes had took over the booking Florida, and he goes, "Well, we don't have you booked anymore. You're not here." And I said, "Well, what do you mean I'm not here? I left to go to Japan, and I couldn't understand. How do you go to Japan, you come back, and you're not there anymore?" And he just said, "Well, we just don't have a spot now. You're just out of a spot." But he said, "I can help you out. I got over in Texas, they're looking for a good big heel over there to work with the Von Erichs. I'll give them a call. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a job here. I guess I will be interested in it." And Michael called, over there in Texas, and talked to Ken Mantell, who was the booker at the time. And like I say, thanks to people helping you out, I made it to, world-class championship wrestling. And like I say, got hooked up with Gary Hart over there, and everything went on from there. It all worked out good. Let me tell you another little story real quick. First time when I first went in, they wanted me to come to the Sportatorium a little early, Gary and whoever wanted to talk to me. So I'm in the Sportatorium, and there's nobody in there, no fans yet or nothing. It's just me, and I look over on the side, and there's a man standing over there in like a zip-up jumpsuit, blue zip-up jumpsuit, like you'd see like maybe somebody wear to be like a handyman or whatever. I had no idea. So then he went in a little office there, and then a second later they called me over and said Fritz wants to talk to you. So I walk in the office, and the same man that was in that jumpsuit was in the office was Fritz Von Erich. I had no idea, that was Fritz Von Erich outside there, and he shook my hand. He goes, "I hear you're going to be working with my boys." And I said, "Yes, sir, I hope so." And he goes, "Well, I'll tell you this, if you take care of my boys, I'll take care of you." And sure enough, I said, "Well, that's good. I'll do my best." And, I took care of him, so he took care of me. So it was a good deal. It all worked out fine.
How were the Von Erichs? Because we've heard all the stories that, well, we know 3 of them passed away, or maybe, I don't even know, maybe 3 or 4 of them passed away from drug-related issues. How was it being in the ring with them?
It was like a Donnybrook fight like you would have in a bar, a legit shoot fight in a bar every night. If you didn't protect yourself, or if you didn't fire back on them just as hard as they were hitting you, they would just eat you up and chew you out. I mean, it was every night you went in there was a fight, a literal fight. I mean, so Texas wasn't if you like easy wrestling, and didn't like to be chopped or didn't like to be punched or touched a certain way, Texas wasn't the place for you. But for me, it was perfect. I love doing that. I love you going out there and just, hit me, and I'm going to hit you right back, just as hard, if not harder. And you can hit me just as hard as you want to hit me. I mean, we wasn't knocking each other's eyes out or knocking teeth out, but I mean, the drop kicks and the chest slaps and the punches to the back of the head, they were pretty snug. Chair shots, all that was quite snug. So yeah, I mean, you had to be a pretty tough son of a gun to stick around anytime in Texas, that's for sure. But I loved it myself. Like Kerry wasn't quite as bad. Now Kevin, the barefoot one, you didn't know what was going to happen with him. He'd just fly at you with knees, elbows, feet. It didn't matter. You just didn't know what could happen. So, But Kerry was pretty much, he was like a night off if he was halfway coherent of what was going on. There was a few nights he just wasn't coherent. So yeah, those nights were a little bit harder. So, but I loved it there. That's where, Bruiser Brody came in there as a baby face. He was big baby face in Texas. So he came in and, we worked a big angle and everything. So I got to work against him there in matches against each other. And that was like, we had some brutal fights. And that's what the Texas fans expected. When they bought tickets to see a show, they wanted to see a fight. They didn't care about no, fancy arm drags or single leg. They wanted to see a fight. They wanted to see blood. They wanted to see somebody get hit with a chair. They wanted to see some tables turned over. They wanted you to go fight up through the rafters and whatever it took. Go outside and fight if you wanted to. Texas fans were crazy. And, I loved it. Every night I stepped in the ring, I loved it. That Sportatorium was in the summertime, it might be 150 degrees in the Sportatorium. They had some big fans blowing, but it was just a hot son of a gun, and it was just crazy, I got to team up with Killer Tim Brooks and got to team up with Maniac Mark Lewin while I was there, and got to fight against the Von Erichs, got to fight against Iceman King Parsons. We had a bunch of, the Freebirds came in. They brought Kamala in. I worked against Kamala in some single matches. So Texas was crazy. Kabuki was there. That's another one. I don't want to forget his name. The great Kabuki was there. He turned babyface with, I don't know if people remember Sunshine. Sunshine was his manager, and Gary Hart used to cut the interview about, Kabuki with the blonde hair woman, she got you, she took over you. Kabuki with the blonde hair, blue-eyed woman. So I got to work with him. He was crazy too. He'd throw stuff out of his hands like spider webs. It'd just be like all encircling you, and he'd start punching you and stuff like that. But he was one of the unsung heroes of pro wrestling. Muta, Great Muta gets all the big accolades, but man, to me, the great Kabuki was the big Japanese wrestler for me. But luckily, like I said, I got to hang around there for a couple of years, and at the same time I was working there, I would be shipped over to Bill. Bill would bring me in over there, because of the TVs. World Class had that strong TV, so I would get to work there, and I'd go over there. And then St. Louis would call, and I'd get to go to St. Louis and spend a week up there working their territory. And so I was getting to move around pretty good, getting to travel around. I think that's when my name finally was starting to get out a little bit better because of the world-class TVs, And so we also had Ravishing Rick Rude there, so I don't want to forget him. We had a lot of stars in world-class championship wrestling. They had a heck of a crew, that's for sure. But I loved it over there. I really did. I mean, the matches, like I said, was brutal, but that was my style. I love that.
As far as David Von Erich, did you ever work him, and what were your thoughts when he passed away? I think you were on one of the memorial shows at least.
Yeah. No, he had already, by the time I got to World Class, he had already passed away. Yeah, they were doing the memorial shows for him. Yeah, I got to be on a couple of them, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It's just hard to recall. Sometimes you have so much stuff, you do. But we was at the Texas Stadium, so yeah, we did those, and you'd have like you might have a 8-man tag team match, then you come back in a single match, then you may have a battle royal. You might be working 2 or 3 times during the show. So, but yeah, I was on those shows, but no, I never got to work against him. And I hear he's probably one of the better ones out of the whole group that worked. So I don't know what happened, with his passing and all that, but it's a shame anything happens, so. It's just, man, I don't know what happened, so.
And as far as the girls for the Von Erichs, I've heard that they by far had the most groupies. They were like lined up waiting for them. Did you notice that?
Well, Hannibal, I don't know about, I don't know about groupies. I just know fans. I mean, they were like when they'd come out of the dressing room, when they'd start their little music, and Kevin or Kerry especially, I mean, it was like they were being grabbed, their hair would be pulled, their wrestling jacket would be almost ripped off of them, and girls slobbering and crying and wanting to touch them, So if that's what you mean by groupies, I know what you mean by groupies, but I don't know about that part of it. But I mean, fan-wise, they were, they were over like you couldn't believe, like Elvis Presley over, girls wanting to grab them and touch them. So yeah, that way. That's what made it so easy in the ring. They were so over in Texas, from the years of, what they did. And it was just so easy. You do anything and the whole crowd will get behind them. You didn't even have to try. You could just grab their hair one time or something and the whole building would erupt, and that's how easy it was. You didn't have to do anything, basically. You could look at them, and all they had to do was just the simplest little thing and the crowd would erupt. So that's what made it so easy.
I heard you got your head tattoos while you were in that territory. What made you do that? Was it for the gimmick, or was that a personal decision that you just always wanted those tattoos on your head?
Hannibal, you know too much information. I don't know, we've been reading Wikipedia, but yeah, I got him in Texas. That was another Gary Hart idea. Hey, gang, why don't we well, he called me Moon in Texas. I don't know why. He come up with the name Moon, Moon. And so everybody started calling me Moon. Instead of gang, it was going Moon. But because I do that bellow, moo, so he started saying Moon. But yeah, he come up with the idea, hey, why don't we go downtown? I got this great idea. We'll get you some skulls on the side of your head, and we'll call one of them Kerry and one of them Kevin, and blah, blah, blah. That's your war symbol. That's your memory. That's how you remember them, and you always want to kill them and this and that, and of course me, I'm stupid. I don't have, I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea, Playboy. Let's do it. So yeah, we went downtown, some shady tattoo parlor down in the alleyway somewhere, and I got a couple of little skulls put on my head like a big dummy. But years later, I guess it became a, pretty known symbol. People see me now when I'm out and they're, hey, I recognize that head. That has to be the one-man gang, that kind of thing, And I also get a lot of, hey, are you Bam Bam Bigelow? And I'm like, nah, I'm the other guy. I'm one-man gang, So, yeah, it was Playboy Gary Hart again.
For the record, I was a bigger fan of you than Bigelow, but I know you guys had that WrestleMania IV match that I'll ask you about in a little bit. But I heard you wrestled in Canada a little bit before you went to WWE. Which promotions were those for?
Well, that was Mid-Atlantic champion, Jim Crockett. We used to come to Maple Leaf Gardens all the time, That was one of the main Mid-Atlantic stops. Was Maple Leaf Gardens. I don't really recall too many other Canadian towns until I got to WWF. Then we was all over Canada, which we all hated because of the money changeover. We didn't hate Canada, we just hated the money changeover because it was just so horrible. But yeah,
it still is horrible, by the way.
Okay, well, Maple Leaf was a big Mid-Atlantic stop back in the day, so yeah, had quite a few matches there. That to me was a big deal. Maple Leaf Gardens. Who had never heard of Maple Leaf Gardens? I mean, that was like Madison Square Garden or someplace. Heck, I mean, I don't even know if it's is it still there nowadays in Toronto?
What it is it's there, but they made it smaller, and the Toronto Maple Leafs don't play there anymore. They play at the Air Canada Centre, but it's there. It's a minor hockey rink, and Ring of Honor has done a couple of shows there, and NXT has done a couple of shows there, but nothing like what it used to be.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I remember it used to be huge for professional wrestling. I'm not sure if it was just Mid-Atlantic.
WWE used to go there once a month, right?
Yeah, once a month for sure. And then even in WWF, we used to go to Maple Leaf, you know, so that was one of the main stops for WWF when they did a Canadian tour. You know, we'd always hit the gardens there and other places, but you know, that was one of the main stops there also.
How did you get recruited by WWE or WWF back then?
Well, I was wrestling for, you know, Bill Watts's UWF, Universal Wrestling Federation. I was his world champion at the time. I was, you know, like months before that, I'd been given the title. Terry Gordy was the world champion, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if, you know, if he got injured or what happened, but the angle was, you know, earlier in the night, one of the Freebirds was in a steel cage or whatever, and ended up, you know, slamming the door on Terry Gordy's arm. And I was scheduled to wrestle him that night for the world title, and he couldn't defend the world title, and they stripped him of the title and presented it to, you know, me and Skandor Akbar. So I don't know the real story behind it, but that's how I ended up with it. I didn't really beat nobody, but then I was the, you know, UWF world champion, so I was in the main event pretty much every night, you know, all over the territory for Bill at that time. And I was just, I don't know where I was working at. I was in a town somewhere, and Ernie Ladd got a hold of me some way. I don't even know how he got a hold of me, and he said that Vince McMahon would like to speak to you. You need to talk to this man. He was really insistent, you know, like you need to talk to this man. It's important. You need to talk to him. I said, okay. So a couple of days went by, you know, I wasn't thinking nothing of it because I'm booked, you know, it's not like I'm out of a job. I'm doing pretty good as the UWF champion. And, you know, I didn't even know, you know, WWF from anything else because, you know, if you're busy doing what you're doing, I don't get to see the TVs, or I couldn't even told you who was, you know, working for that company at that particular time because I'm just involved in what I'm doing. I don't get to know what's going on in the other areas because we didn't have, you know, there was no internet or anything at that time. So Ernie gets in touch with me again, and he's like, man, you need to talk to this guy. I said, okay, well, here's where I'm at. You know, if you want to have him call me. You know, I wouldn't even, you know, for me, I wasn't even sure who Vince McMahon was. I didn't, you know, I guess it's pretty stupid sounding, really, but sure enough, telephone rings and it's Vince McMahon, and you know, he's talking to me and you know, wants to meet with me and asked me, do I have any day off coming up? And it just happened, just miraculous, that like 2 days later I was going to have a day off, you know. And he said, well, we'll fly you and your wife to New York, and you know, we'll pick you up in a limousine, and I'd like to have a meeting with you. So that's basically what happened. I flew up there and went in the it's not the fancy Titan Towers like it is now. It was a different place, but went in there, and you know, we had him and Pat Patterson was in there and had a meeting, and I asked him about, well, how does your towns run? I mean, you got 2 or 3 towns a night? How does that work? He pulled out his book and showed me his book and everything, and he asked me what I was making, you know, as down there, and as the UWF champion, I told him, you know, I'm making $100,000, you know, a year, which I wasn't, of course, but I throw that number out there, and he's like, well, I can guarantee you'll make, you know, more than that, way more than that, you know. And he goes, I can see the marquee. He was like, yeah, I can see the marquee, One Man Gang. That's a marquee name right there. You know, he's really good about, you know, giving you the BS or whatever when he's wanting something. He can really make you feel like you're the only man in the whole place. And he was like, you know, we got Hulk Hogan. We would love for you to come in. We want you to work with Hulk Hogan and, you know, this and that, and join our team, you know. And no money, nothing talked about, you know, nothing about money or anything except, you know, you'll make more than 100,000. He just, you know, basically he said, I'll give you an opportunity, and, you know, you can make what you want to make of it or whatever. And so I said, I give it some thought. I said, sure, why not? You know, so I shook his hand. I didn't sign anything. It was just a handshake. I said, you know, you bought yourself a wrestler. So, and when I went up there, I had gig marks on my head, from being down there bleeding every night. And first thing he said, you won't have to worry about that here because we don't do that. Now, I was like, well, that don't bother me one bit. I don't have any problem with that. But so I went back to, UWF and told Bill, the meeting and everything. And he gave his, he said, it's fine. He gives blessings. I give my notice to leave. And the last night, I was in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and I was defending the title against Big Bubba Rogers, who later, as you know, became Big Boss Man, who teamed up with me as the Twin Towers. So, what's the odds of that happening, right? And so I worked against Big Bubba Rogers for the world title, and the Crockett's had came in because the Crockett's had bought out Bill Watts's UWF territory. They were going to take it over or whatever. So, and I'd called Vince, like a day before. I said, Mr. McMahon, they want me to lose right in the middle to, drop the strap, or, what do you want me to do? And he said, just do whatever they want you to do. Don't cause any trouble. It doesn't make one bit of difference at all. So, I went out there and we did a finish where Akbar came out as my manager, but he ended up turning on me, going with Big Bubba, and they just did a gimmick where he, threw something in my face, and Big Bubba rolled me up for the pin and became the UWF champion. And, basically 2 days later, I was on a plane starting in the World Wrestling Federation, and the rest is history.
They did a lot of squash matches with you when they first brought you in. Was that just to build you up to wrestle Hulk Hogan on the house shows?
Yeah, that's all it was. It was just, if you watch the TVs, a lot of matches were just squash matches, but mine especially, 2 minutes, 1 minute, handicap matches, whatever. It was just to get the character, one-man gang character, more, I guess, over. It wasn't like people didn't. So once you went to WWF, it's like you didn't have any past, basically. You just you started your career all over. I mean, anything you did in the past, it wasn't like I could get up there and say, I was UWF champion. You couldn't say that. You're basically a whole new person being reborn. So yeah, it was just to get the character over, and I was one of the few people that was allowed to even to actually hit a referee and do some damage to a referee. And one of the shows, I actually got to give the referee the finish, and pick him up and slam him around a little bit. So yeah, they just did that to get me ready for Hogan. And so that was basically it. He said, just, keep your tights clean, which means, stay on your feet. Don't be taking no crazy bumps, save all that for the Hulkster, baby.
Yeah, and they did most of your Hulk Hogan matches on house shows. I don't remember seeing a recorded version when you were one-man gang. What was it like working with Hulk Hogan? Because he was still at his peak in that point of popularity.
Yeah. It was like, it's crazy. Well, I know I keep saying crazy, but, it was crazy. I mean, he was just, man, they built him up to be so over. It's just, I don't know. I mean, how do you build somebody up that much to they're over that big? You know what I'm saying? And as soon as his music would hit, he didn't even have to be out there. Just the music itself, and the whole building would explode. And people say, "Oh man, well, you had sellouts after sellout after sellout." But I'm like, well, it wasn't me. It was Hogan. Hogan could be out there with a broom and a mop and sell the place out at that particular time. I just happened to be the lucky body that happened to be against it at that time. But now that I think back on it, I was probably, one-man gang, not Akeem, but one-man gang at that time was probably one of the few heels that people honestly believe could actually possibly beat Hogan to win the World Heavyweight Championship. I believe the people honestly believe that I could beat him, because I had the way they had put me over on TV, just demolishing people and not giving a crap about what I do on TV, So Yeah, but man, like I said, he was over so big, man. It was just unbelievable that a company could get somebody that strong, and I couldn't imagine, just the pressure of having all that on your shoulders, carrying a company like that. I mean, I know there's perks, money wise and different things, but just the pressure of carrying a whole company on your shoulders, I bet it had to be tremendous amount of pressure. People don't think about it, but I bet it was a lot of pressure on him. And I've bumped into him a couple of times at different signing here or there. And in Orlando a few years back, I stopped at it. He had like a little, I don't know what his little place he has out there.
Shop or something.
Yeah. That's it. I stopped in there. He was doing a autograph signing that particular day, and they were lined up all the way around the building and everything, to go in. I think it was like $200 a pop to get a picture or autograph or something like that. I was like, holy cow. But anyway, it's Hulk Hogan, I guess you can do it. But I went in there and talked to him just for a few minutes, shook his hands, and he thanked me profusely, about our matches. He said, those are some of the easiest matches I've ever had, working guys, and he said, I appreciate you taking care of me and, really protecting my body. And every night, it was pretty obvious that except for a couple of count outs or he got counted out one time or whatever, but pretty much every night you knew you was going to take the Hulk Hogan guillotine leg drop. So, but he would come and find me wherever I was every night we worked, and he would come over and ask me, is it okay, if I, this is the finish, do you have any problems with it? You mind if I, go over on you tonight, that way? And like I was going to say, oh no, Hogan, you're not going over on the one-man gang. You got to take it yourself, buddy. So, but yeah, to me, he was, I've heard other people talk totally different things about him, but with me personally, that's the way it was every night. He was like real courteous, real generous in the match, and once we got a set match, it pretty much, a good 15-minute set match, it pretty much stayed that way all the way around this circuit. You didn't really have to do too much. Like I said, it's same with the Von Erichs. I mean, the fight wasn't nothing like that, but I mean, match-wise, you really didn't have to do anything. You just look at the man and the crowd would explode. You're talking 22,000, 30,000, whatever, the crowd would just explode. So, yeah, it was like a night off every night working with that man.
So would it be once you got the routine down, he would just come up to you and say, is the finish okay? And you wouldn't even have to talk about the match. You would just.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I heard you had the Montreal attendance record. I don't know if it still stands, but for the Forum.
How do you get this information? I mean, yeah, him and I had the attendance record at the Montreal Forum. And like you say, I don't know now, but yeah, we did have it at one time. So there's another little thing I can put on my resume. But, that's not mentioned very often. But, hey, this little kid from Spartanburg, South Carolina had the attendance record at the Montreal Forum. I ain't going to say I drew the people. I was in the match, but, still. It is a record, I guess, that's better than not having it.
Yeah, and that's one of the historic buildings for wrestling, at least here in Canada, just like the Leaf Gardens. Those are probably the two most famous wrestling arenas in Canada of that era.
Right.
So as far as your pay for those matches, do you remember what your highest pay would be for wrestling Hogan on a house show?
No, the pay was a set pay, Hannibal. It don't matter where I wrestled. It didn't matter if it was, 20,000 or 50,000. My pay every time him and I worked was $5,000. I'm not saying that's bad. Don't get me wrong now. That's, that's tremendous. I don't, but that was my set pay. I believe it never went over that, it never went under that. So anytime I was booked with Hogan anywhere in the world, in the country or whatever arena, it was $5,000. So, I mean, you figure if we're doing, you do 10 nights at $5,000, that adds up. You do 20 nights, 30 nights, I mean, I'm sure Hogan wasn't making that. I'm sure he was way over that, but he deserved it. I mean, he's the one he's the one that's over and drawing the crowd. I just happen to be the recipient of the big leg drop every night. I just happened to be in the right spot for that. So no, I went and thanked you. I went right to him and thanked him, for that. And I went and thanked Mr. McMahon for paying me. I'm very appreciative, but I don't have any problem. Who the heck don't want to go out there and wrestle 15 minutes at the most and get paid $5,000? Are you kidding me? I mean, I've had regular shoot jobs, or I've had to work at the penitentiary for 12 hours at a time, and making $13 an hour. Here I am. I go out in the ring and wrestle 15 minutes and get paid $5,000. Holy cow! You got to be joking. Who wouldn't love to do that?
For the pay-per-views, you would get a pay-per-view bonus, though, right? I don't think you ever wrestled Hogan on a pay-per-view. Maybe the Survivor Series, but that was
but that don't. I mean, that's a whole different. That's not a single match. I never was a big enough star, to get one of those big single matches on pay-per-views, But yeah, pay-per-views was different pay scale, So if you WrestleManias and those type matches, it was different. I mean, I might pick up, 10 grand, 13 grand, or something like that on those type big, pay-per-view type shows, which to me, hey, I told you $5 grand's a lot to me. So if I got a paycheck and it said $2 grand on it back in the day, I was like tickled pink. But so if I picked up a paycheck and it was $10,000 on it, I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is the greatest thing in the world to me. It should be to anybody.
Yeah, and with the inflation, that would be considerably more today if taking that into account. But I heard for house shows, you were paid usually, if you're not wrestling Hogan, an amount, percentage of the house according to where you were on the card. And TV tapings were not that much, were they?
No, TV tapings, unless you had the dark match with Hogan, which means that's the advertised match that would draw the people in. If you had that match with Hogan, you were taken care of. That was a payday match. If you just had a TV match, it was $50 for talent. Us regular guys, the guys that came in for TV, the enhancement talent, yeah, they got a regular, whatever their paydays were. I don't know what they were getting, but us regular talent that worked for the company was $50. Can you imagine? I mean, we're working for the WWF, World Wrestling Federation, biggest wrestling company in the world, and we get $50. That wouldn't even cover our hotel rooms, much less food and rental car.
And didn't you have to wrestle sometimes 3 or 4 times a night on one of those?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because they was doing so many different TV tapings of different, for different shows, which I didn't know at the time. They was doing one for the USA, then they had another one for another show that, for whatever. But you had so many different shows on at the same time, and you had to do matches for all these different shows. Yeah, you may wrestle a couple, 3 times a night, and sometimes you may wrestle once, and sometimes you may just, luckily for me, I just have a dark match with Hogan and get the big payday. So, it was up and down. It was all, it was all good one way or the other. It was just a long day, man. TV was just really, really long because you had to be there for 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever it was. And, they would be there taking your names to make sure you're there. I'm sure some guys got special privileges, but us regular grunts, we'd be there for 11, 12 o'clock. You had to sign in, and, Arnold Skolin be there taking your name or whatever. So, it was a long, long day. You had to just get suited up because you never knew when your promos would be. So, you might just be sitting there and all of a sudden they call you, oh, go over to the promo area. You got promos, So we'd have to run over, me and Slick and Butch or whoever would have to run over there and, cut some promos. And then you go sit down for a while or do whatever you do, go to catering and hang out there. And then they might call you back again. You got some more promos, run back over there. So you'd have to run back again. And it was long, man. Long days for sure.
I forgot to even mention Slick. What was it like having him as your manager? And would he go to the house shows? Because I remember seeing you at house shows as Akeem, and Slick would not be there for those ones.
Yeah, Hannibal. When the first couple of years, even when I first changed over to Akeem, Slick was on the road. Then to cut back on expenses, they took the managers off the road. They just used them for TVs and house shows. They didn't go to any more house shows. They took them off the road. That's probably the ones you saw. But before that, they went to all the shows. I mean, if I was at a house show, Slick was there. So he was super manager. You know, I mean, I didn't know when I first went into WWF. I didn't know him. I didn't, you know, he'd been around. He'd been in Kansas City area managing over there and things, but I didn't know him, you know, or anything. And Vince had just said, you know, we're gonna put you with Slick, the Doctor of Style, and you know, I didn't care, whatever, you know. Now I make a joke with Slick now and said, you know, when I came in, I wanted to be with somebody like Bobby Heenan or Jimmy Hart or somebody that I knew I could maybe get a championship from. If I was with you, I knew I'd never be a champion, you know. So he gets a little hot about that, but we joke about it nowadays. But yeah, I was with him. We ended up being traveling mates, you know, because I just couldn't travel with other guys because they have certain habits that I didn't like. I'm not saying what they are, but other guys had habits I didn't like. And Slick is, you know, pretty much everybody knows he was a minister. Even back in those days, he was a minister. So we got along really well, you know. And so I ended up, him and I being traveling mates and, you know, splitting the cost of rooms and whatever. We just ended up hanging out and ended up being, even after the wrestling days finished, you know, we're still good friends. You know, we talk on the telephone and things. He calls me every birthday. I call him on his birthday. And then in between, since this pandemic, we've checked up on each other, you know. So, yeah, we keep up with each other.
And for the fans watching this, One Man Gang is hooking us up with an interview with Slick, so you can look forward to that. People have been wondering what he's been up to because I guess he keeps himself pretty quiet these days, just like you.
Yeah. He's living up in Louisville, Kentucky. Has a church there, which you know, he's a minister of, but they hadn't been having church, you know, because of the pandemic and all that. But other than that, he kind of, you know, right now he told me he just hangs out around the house. He tries to stay out anything public because, you know, just being, you don't want to take a chance on getting the virus or anything. He's a little up in age, kind of like me, you know, we're both getting up in age. And so we kind of just hang around the house and try to stay away from things, you know, that we could possibly get infected from. But yeah, he's an intelligent, super smart man. I don't know. He's got like 4 degrees of different things. I mean, he's constantly going to school and college courses and stuff. So he has like 4, maybe 5 degrees. I'm not even, you can ask him when you talk to him, but yeah, he's super intelligent. So that was one of the big problems, you know, kind of we had in WWF. You know, Vince wanted to be the pimp, you know, kind of that jive talking thing, and Slick kind of wanted to come across as more of a educated type person, you know. And I don't know if you remember when he did the Jive Soul Bro video, the music video. He went into a fried chicken place and he tried to stiff him on the bill. He tried to get out without paying the bill, and he was like, when they come up with that idea, he was like really upset about it. He didn't want to come across that way at all. He did it, but he didn't want to come across that way. So, you know, he wanted to be more of a, you know, educated type, you know. He didn't want to really do the pimp thing as much as he wanted to actually show that he had some education and whatever, you know, but had to do what the man wanted you to do, right? I mean, if not, it would never have been Akeem, right?
Well, he did an excellent job of playing that role. He was a great actor in that case. There is a fan on here. You already talked about Andre a bit, but he wants to know, what was your impressions of Andre when you saw him for the first time?
Well, the first time, I mean, when I first time I saw Andre as a wrestling fan, not as a wrestler, but he came to our little Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium, and and when he came in the door, all you could see was this big shadow. And this back in the day when he had that gigantic bush. I don't know. I guess you call it a bush. That big hairdo thing. He was gigantic, and I saw him come through. You could see him come through the doorway, and he just like covered the whole entranceway. And it's like, oh my God. And then when he came to the ring, I was like second row, ringside or whatever, and you could. Basically, the way the ring was, you could see the feet right in front of your face, and his foot was like, like gigantic foot, and his just the whole body was just so gigantic. I was just like taken aback at how huge this man was when you seen him in person. You see him on TV, he was like, yeah, he looks big, but then when you seen him in person, it was like a whole nother thing. That man was like truly a true giant. I mean, I felt when I was in the ring against him, I felt like I was a small little kid, and I was, 6'8", 400 pounds, and I felt like I was a small child wrestling against him. But man, it was wow, it was something to see, that's for sure.
Did you ever eat with him? Because you seem like you could probably keep up with him if anyone could at the table.
You know what? I didn't know. I never really knew Andre to be that big an eater. I mean, he drank quite a bit, but eating wise, the only time I remember, like I said, we didn't travel with him or hang out with him, after the shows or nothing. But I mean, I just remember one time in the dressing room, he had his little wine vat they'd set up for him, and he'd ordered, 8 fillet of fish. I mean, I don't know if that's a lot, 8 of them, but they brought that in, but the darn thing looked like a little biscuit in his hand when he went to eat them, So then when we went to France, we went to France on the WWF tour, and he took us all out to eat and stuff. And knowing I don't drink, I'm not a drinker, and he, oh, boss, you got to drink beer with us. And so he bought a beer, but the beer was in a mug about the, gigantic mug like this, you have to drink beer. And then he, made us eat snails, it's not something I grew up eating. I grew up, eating cornbread and, stuff like that. I didn't grow up eating snails, but it's Andre the Giant. He's paying the bill, so I gave it a try. I about threw up all over the place, but, got to hang out with Andre the Giant. What the heck?
Now, for WrestleMania IV, you had a very memorable couple of matches with Bam Bam Bigelow and Macho Man. Could you share with us your thoughts on that day?
Yeah, people ask me about WrestleManias, but to me, I mean, it just wasn't, back in those days, to me, it just wasn't that big of a deal like they make it nowadays. Now they have all these special events all wrapped around it and everything. But back then, it was just you show up and you're at WrestleMania. It wasn't that big of a deal. So to me, I've told people it's just another work day. I just show up, I wrestled whoever I was supposed to wrestle, and just after that, we went on our way, went to the next town. It just, I don't know. Maybe I was looking at it the wrong way. I wasn't thinking at that particular time, maybe there's, 2 million people watching on pay-per-view or 4 million. I don't know what the pay-per-view buys were at that time. But so, I mean, it really wasn't that big a deal. And, Bam Bam Bigelow, he was easy to work with. There wasn't no trouble at all with him. When he first came in, I had to put him over like in a couple of 3 minutes. We'd do house shows and they'd say, oh, they want Bam Bam over in 2 minutes or whatever. So okay, whatever. So we'd come up with just an easy little finish, and I'd get him over in like 2 minutes and he'd win the match. Most people, when you really think about it, by the time they go home, they're not going to know who won and lost matches anyway. They just, So, but the match with Macho, I had a lot of matches with Macho because I'd worked with him up in International Championship Wrestling, Kentucky. I guess he trusted me, or whatever, but he spoke up and got I ended up with a lot of main events with Macho Man, back in the day. So I was lucky in that aspect, but man, he was like lightning out there. He was, you couldn't even turn around. He was jumping off, from the turnbuckle to hit you with something or do something to you. I mean, it was just crazy. And it was really, by then, I don't know, just maybe because it's WWF, but he started laying out matches, step by step by step. And I'm not good at that. He would end up having to basically tell me the whole match, which he would do. But, that got to be a little hard on me, but match wise, it was easy, but just the step by step, me trying to memorize matches, I'm just no good at that. So,
You had a one-man gang action figure too. I could never find it, so it must have sold well. The old rubber action figure. What did you think of getting your own toy back in those days when not many wrestlers had them?
Oh man, what do you think? I mean, it was, you get your own action figure. It's like, man, I'm an action figure. It's like you can't believe it, and I don't know about it selling well. If it did, I didn't see it on my paycheck anyway, but that's another thing. But, it was that old stiff one that had the arms up like that. You couldn't even move they had no movement to them. I think they were LJN, if I'm not mistaken. I think pretty much back in those days, I think pretty much anybody that was anybody had one of those big stiff figures made of them. I think Slick had one made. Managers had them made. I think they even did a referee. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, what the heck? I mean,
I was a kid back in those days, and I had the Slick one, but I could never find yours, and I always wanted it, so I still don't have it to this day. They ended up turning you into Akeem shortly after the WrestleMania IV. How did they approach you with that gimmick change?
Man, it just really wasn't no huge deal made about it. I don't know, the first word I actually got about it, Slick kind of came to me and said, we got this, we're gonna got the idea about making you a black man or something. And I honestly thought Slick was joking about it. I didn't take it serious. And then I don't know, I was walking around backstage at catering or wherever I was at, and Vince stopped me and asked me, could I dance? And I said, I'm like, no, I can't dance. And he said, well, you need to learn, get with Slick and have Slick give you some lessons. And I still had no idea what was going on. So eventually, it finally came out, that they finally broke down and told me, that we got this idea that Slick went back to Africa and found your roots and found out your roots was, you're really a black man and we're going to call you Akeem. And, I just thought it was a big joke for the longest, up until they, Vince said, don't shave your head anymore. I was doing the mohawk and he said, don't, cut your, shave your head, let your hair grow out. And then it's kind of looks like I'm going to be Akeem. And then they called me up and had me, wanted to fly me to New York to get fitted for the Akeem outfit. They had drawings and artwork for it and everything. And I had to go there and they actually did an actual fitting, took my sizes and showed me what it was going to look like and this and that. So then it was pretty much set. There was no way around it then. I hated it. I'm like, it's the end. It's the end of my life. It's the end of my career. Come on, Hannibal. It'd be like somebody coming to you and telling you the same thing. What if they told you, oh, we're going to make you a black man, Hannibal? There's no way you're going to believe it, right?
Yeah, I would be a little shocked. I liked the character, though, as I'm sure maybe you may have changed your mind a little bit at the end. But as a kid, I never knew they were trying to make you a black man. I just saw you as like the big guy that danced.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was ever really said that I was a black man, but he went to Africa, deepest, darkest Africa. I don't know, I'm not saying that everybody from deepest, darkest Africa, but I don't know. But, they shot the video. We was out in Connecticut, wherever, on some back alley, and me and Slick and the announcer, what's his name?
Mean Gene.
Mean Gene, that's it. Mean Gene was there, and they'd hired some professional dancers, and they had dressed them up, in their African dance outfits or whatever. And then, Mean Gene's like, yeah, I guess it's still on YouTube. You can look it up, One Man Gang changes to Akeem video or something like that. But it's like in this dark alleyway and smoke and everything, and the garbage can kind of explodes, and I pop up behind it in my Akeem outfit, doing the yeah, brother, and all that, like that. And Slick's there, telling Mean Gene, from now on, it's no longer One Man Gang, it's Akeem, from deepest, darkest Africa. And Mean Gene's like, what's he talking about? Maybe like, he don't understand. And then, he says, from now on, it's Akeem. And the dancers start dancing around, in a circle or whatever. And they all started chanting, Akeem, 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 like that, And then Slick gives me he got like a big boom box. He gives me the boom box, and I put it up there, and the camera shows me and Slick walking away from Mean Gene with the dancers dancing around where Gene is, just chanting my name, and we're like that. We're bopping down, showing me doing my little Akeem dance, bopping away, and then the camera focuses in, and all the dancers start to close in on Gene like that. Then it cuts off. So that was the actual intro video, because I'd always wondered. I asked Vince, how are you going to explain, One Man Gang just shows up and he's Akeem, and he goes, no, we got that taken care of. Don't worry about that. We know what we're doing. And that's what they did. And then from then on, I was Akeem. One Man Gang was never mentioned again.
How did the pay work when they brought you for a video shoot like that? Was that considered $50 TV pay? Or
that was considered zero pay.
Okay.
Nothing for zero. Just to do the video, you just you introducing a new character. I guess they figured that's, part of your job. It wasn't no extra. They pay for the hotel room and stuff like that, your transportation, things like that. But it had us a limousine to get us around and things, but it was like an all-night shoot. We went to some alleyway, and they had trailers for us and things, and it was pretty much, it was like all night. I don't know, we started like at midnight and finished up like around 5 a.m. in the morning, just before daylight, because it had to be done before daylight, So that was a long shoot, so, but it worked, I guess, the fans kind of picked up on it, and you'd still get, someone go, that's no Akeem, that's One Man Gang, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. But I didn't know, character-wise, I wasn't told anything. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to talk, what to do. I didn't know anything about the character. I didn't know, they didn't come to me and lay out they didn't have a written diagram saying, well, this is the character of Akeem. This is what we want you to act as or talk as or whatever. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. And so the first night that I went out as Akeem, Vince McMahon came to me in the back and go, this is your big night. This is your big night. This is Akeem's, debut, make it a good one. And I said, oh, man, I was nervous. You'd have to be nervous. I don't care who you are. You're nervous. So when the curtains opened up and we, started toward the ring, and they started Slick's Jive So Bro music with a little drum roll and everything, I was like, man, I just going to act stupid. I'm just going to act as stupid as I can act. So I started moving my hands, and doing a little dance, almost like the bushwhacker walk. You remember the bushwhacker walk? I was just moving my hands and doing this and doing that. I had no idea what I was doing. Then we got in the ring, and I was, I'd heard the Jive So Bro so many times, I kind of knew the words. So I started mouthing the words in front of the camera and stuff, and got up on the apron and did a little, whatever I was doing, and got in the ring and did it in the ring and worked the guy and, put my butt in his face and just stupid. Whatever I could think of was stupid. That's what I did. And then, after the little match was over with, I come back in, and as soon as I walked through the curtains, everybody was like, hey, they gave me like a standing ovation, and Vince gave me the thumbs up like that. So I pretty much knew I was safe right then.
Did you expect the dance to get over so much? Because I remember being in the crowd in those days, and when you would come out, even though you were a heel, the crowd would be doing the dance.
No, not at all, man. You think anybody expects anything to get over? You don't. I mean, you think Steve Austin expected 316 to get over like it did, or any of them other things? No, I didn't. I had no idea. I was just doing it because it was Akeem. That's the only thing I could think of to do. And the crowd eventually, I guess if you show it to them enough, they start picking up on it. So you look out in the crowd, and the crowd would be like moving around with you and doing their little thing. And so, I'd give them the little high sign like that, or whatever. And, like Slick and I talked about it and said, and instead of turning Big Boss Man babyface, we feel that maybe they should have turned Akeem babyface, because Akeem, could have been easy babyface, but didn't go that way. But, it was still good. This is the word I got before Akeem actually debuted and started. This is what was the pressure was put on me. Vince McMahon actually said, he says, George, he didn't ever call me by my gimmick name. It was always, your real name, George. George, I have a spot in my company for Akeem, but I don't have a spot for the one-man gang. So that's that's a lot of pressure, man. If you don't get that, if that character don't work for you, you're out on the street, right? So luckily it worked.
I agree that if they had given that character a babyface push, you would have done all right there, because the fans were ready for it at that point. But for some reason, they went the other direction. But how did they approach you with teaming you with Boss Man?
There was no approach. It was just, it's not like we sat down and have meetings. We never had meetings. It was just, you're going to team up with Big Boss Man, and then they come up with the name, the Twin Towers. I mean, we had nothing to do with that. It was just a happening, and I guess they needed a good sized team to work against Demolition, who had the tag team titles at the time, and me and Big Boss Man just happened to be the right two to put in that spot. Boss Man, he'd already had a little run with Hogan also, and so it just worked out, Twin Towers. Then we ended up working against Hogan and Savage on that live event from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's another resume
event. That was actually that was the angle that got me interested in wrestling. That's the very first wrestling show I ever saw, was that episode of Saturday Night's Main Event with that match.
Wow, darn Hannibal, you're making me feel old, man. But yeah, we did that. It was I don't know, what were they called? Mega Powers?
Mega Powers, yeah.
Yeah.
89.
Mega Powers versus the Twin Towers. So we were we were instrumental in breaking up the Mega Powers at that time. So that's another little thing I can put on my resume. And the thing with Miss Elizabeth, Macho Man specifically requested that I be the one to do the little spot where, I sidestepped and throwed him out, and he took a bump on top of Miss Elizabeth. That's when Hogan grabbed her up and carried her back to the dressing room. He wasn't going to let Big Boss Man do it. He specifically said, Gang does it. He used to call me Crusher. He would still call me Crusher from way back in the days. He was sure, I was the only one who was allowed to do that, so that was pretty good. That he had that confidence in me that he knew that I wasn't going to, fling him out, 100 miles an hour and, crush Miss Elizabeth. All I did when he come at me, all I did was sidestep and just touch, I just put my hands on him. He actually, he went flying himself, basically. It was all on him. All I did was touch him. So
was he as protective of Miss Elizabeth as people say, locking her in broom closets? Or Honky Tonk Man said he once kicked everyone out of the dressing room just so she could be in there. But he exaggerates sometimes, so you never know. You seem more neutral.
Yeah, he was very protective of Miss Elizabeth. I mean, I mean, come on, man. Can you blame him? I mean, I don't know about that. I don't know about locking her up and things. I don't know myself personally, but I mean, he was protective. That's for sure. No doubt about that. I know one incident on an airplane for sure. He was, we were all on a flight. It was jam packed. I don't know where we were going, but we were on a flight jam packed. He was in the back with us. This is before, I guess he was world champion, obviously, or he would have had first class, but he was in the back with us. Us meaning the regular boys that had to ride in the back area. So, I mean, in the only seatings they had would split him and Miss Elizabeth up. They couldn't be together. So Macho Man got up and started, he went over and asked the guy where I was sitting. He said, would you mind moving over there? And he started moving people around. It ended up being, me by the window, Miss Elizabeth in the middle, and Macho Man on the end, and after he done moved like 5 people on different seats, so I guess that shows he's protective. He trusted me, enough that to put me beside her, I guess from knowing me all those years before, knew that I was pretty straight dude, you know what I mean? I wouldn't go like reach over and try to rub her leg or nothing like that, so.
Was there ever any talk of you guys winning the tag team titles?
That's an easy one to answer. No, never. Not one single moment did we think we were going to win the tag team titles. Do we think we should have? Heck yes, we think we should have won them and let the Demolition chase us for a little bit. Then we could have dropped them back to the Demolition on one of the pay-per-views or something like that, but no, never. It never was going to happen.
People like to look back at Demolition and say they were just Road Warriors ripoffs, but I remember how over they were. In your opinion, like they were over, were they not, when you wrestled them?
Oh yeah, heck yeah, they were over. And as being Road Warriors, that's like people telling me that I was made Akeem as a joke to get back at Dusty Rhodes, but that's ridiculous because Dusty Rhodes came in the territory at the same time that I was Akeem, and they put him in the polka dots, and him and I actually had matches against each other, dance offs and matches and whatever. So I mean, that's not, no, they wouldn't. I never considered them a rip off of the Road Warriors. To me, they were just Demolition. It was just another team, just like Powers of Pain or anybody else. It was just a cool team. They had one of the coolest intro music they anybody had, So, but they were easy to work with. There was no trouble at all. Super easy. Just the biggest problem was getting the paint on your tights every night. You get that face paint, get all over your wrestling tights every night. And we was on tour, we'd be out 3 or 4 weeks at a time. And man, that stuff would be on there the whole tour. You'd see Barry Dasso's face just like tattooed on my leg or my ass or something like that. So, but match-wise, they were super easy to work with. And yeah, they were over. They were over son of a guns.
There's a fan on here that wants to know if you had any interaction with Jesse Ventura.
No, never any interaction with Jesse. He kind of, he kind of did his own little thing on the commentary thing and whatever, but no, not really. He kind of, by the time I got there, he wasn't actually performing anymore. He done moved it all over to commentary, and they got their own special little room that they get to hang out in and get ready or whatever, their own little dressing areas where they get made up, put makeup on. Us grunts, we got to, get in the dressing room with everybody. So, nah, I didn't really get to hang out with him. Wished I could have, I guess. But no, I didn't get to.
Now, did Boss Man travel with you and Slick on the road?
Never. No, me and Slick was by ourselves constantly. Boss Man did his own thing. Like I said, people had their little habits that Slick and myself didn't really care for. And the only time, one time, Ravishing Rick Rude wanted to ride somewhere, and he got in the car with us, and he wanted to do, have a little doobie, And we got kind of mad about it. We like, nah, we don't really want you to do that. So, he got to the building, he kind of got mad at us, and he's like, here's my trans money. I got to ride with somebody else. And same thing happened with Black Bart, not smoking, but drinking wise. He was like, always had to have that 6-pack or 12-pack, whatever, and we didn't want to mess with that. So he was the same thing, got mad, and nobody ever ride with us because they knew that, Slick and I was straight. We didn't do anything. So
it's not like when they decided to split you guys that you were upset or anything then with you and Boss Man?
No, not at all. We was just a tag team. We didn't hang out together. We didn't travel together. The only time I saw him was at the arena when we got to the arena. And a lot of times we didn't even know he was in a tag team match till we actually got to the arena. We was in so many towns every night, you didn't know who he was working a lot of times till you actually got there. So, no, it wasn't nothing. People's asked me that about Boss Man, but no, I didn't hang out with him. I didn't travel with him. And, and it's not because he was a bad guy. He wasn't a bad guy. He was a cool dude, He just had different habits than I had, and I didn't want to be around that, That's just me. So that's just the way it went.
What did you think about your match at WrestleMania 6 with Boss Man?
They just came to me and, when it got closer time to the match, they said, you only got, I don't know what it was, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever it was. It was short. He said, you put Boss Man over, and I said, fine, no problem. So I asked Boss Man, what do you want to use? And he does that, he was doing that big sidewalk slam or whatever it's called. That's what we used. And there was nothing fancy about it. Just put him over and 1, 2, 3. And I rolled out. And then I think Ted DiBiase came in and they got into some kind of altercation. And then they went into a little angle, but I went to Vince and asked him, I said, I just asked him why didn't I get an angle with Big Boss Man? We were tag team partners. Most of the time when you break up with a tag team partner, you get some kind of angle out of it. You get a little run with it. But he went with DiBiase against Boss Man instead of me. I don't, never got an answer why, but, I guess it's history. No, it doesn't matter now, but at that particular time, I couldn't figure it out. So,
yeah, instead, I guess you just they stopped putting you in angles, and you ended up replacing Bad News Brown, I guess, against Jake the Snake on house shows. What happened to Bad News? He quit or something?
Yeah, I believe that's what happened. I believe he just left. But that happened, 2 or 3 times. I was on tour one time, and I was coming through the airport, and this PA thing come on and, said, George Gray, you have a telephone call, blah, blah, blah. So I went and got the telephone thing, and there was travel people saying that, Big Boss Man one time it was Kurt Hennig, said that they'd been injured or whatever. I don't know. I heard later they'd been injured in a fight or something, but they got injured and you need to switch tours and go take their spot, So I just got into the town I was working at, so I had to take another flight to a whole nother city and take their spot, barely getting there in time to, get to the arena and get in there and take their spot for the match. And then I had to take their spot for the whole, rest of the tour. Instead of ending up there going home, I had to keep on going, to fill in for them guys. So I did that a couple, 3 times. Yeah, you're right.
And I guess your last feud was against Tony Atlas when he was Saba Simba. I was working with him.
Well, we never really, nothing ever really happened between us. He did come in and they made him Saba Simba for whatever god awful reason that was for. I have no idea. I still can't explain it. But we never really got to go anywhere with it. I left the company before anything happened. So, we never know what would have happened.
What made you leave the company? Just you didn't like that they kind of had no plans for you and you didn't want to lose your name value?
Yeah, they didn't. Well, that's the main thing. They didn't have any plans. I was just floating around, opening match, second match. And like you said earlier, when you're working, being paid position on the card, and you're opening match, second match, you're not getting paid very much money. So even in a World Wrestling Federation, money just wasn't there. So I was ended up, in this particular time, Slick had been taken off the road. All managers were off the road for house shows. So I was basically by myself. I was, rental cars, hotel rooms, I was paying for it myself. And that's a pretty big chunk of change by the end of the tour. So I was ended up paying more than what I was actually making on my paycheck. So I actually had a meeting, and he said, with Mr. Vince McMahon, and I explained my situation, and he said, well, we've had you on the back burners, and but we got some things coming up. We got Survivor Series coming up. We got some things planned, and he always gives you, once you go in a meeting with him, thinking how bad things are, you come out, you think you're like you're going to be the next world champion or something. It's just the way he does it. But it just never got better. And so I went home off a tour. On one of the tours, I had 3 days off, usually long enough to do your laundry and whatever. And I was supposed to end up going back to somewhere like Minot, North Dakota, some awful place. I'm not saying it's awful, but it's awful if you was a wrestler, because it was just didn't draw, even for WWF. So I just decided it's over with. I can't do it anymore. I was tired. Basically, I was beat up from all the touring, being squashed in the back of them airplanes when you're 400 pounds, it's not healthy on your knees. It's not healthy on your back. I was just hurting all the time. I was crippled up. And I just made a decision, I didn't give a notice or anything. I just said, this is it. I'm not going back out. So I stayed home. I didn't go, I didn't catch my flight. I didn't make the town. Then like the next day, I get a telephone call. It's Pat Patterson. And want to know, Vince wants to speak to you. Would you mind speaking to him? No, sure. Well, we'll talk. So Vince gets on the telephone and asks, he's George, what's the problem? You didn't make the show, blah, blah. He's giving me his Vince McMahon spiel. And, I went into detail about what I was making on my checks compared to what I was paying, out, which was more. So I was actually spending more out of my own savings to cover the tours that I was making, at that particular time, which that's pretty foolish, really. But, he was like, well, George, this is not good business. This is not the way to do business. And I said, well, I know, Mr. McMahon. I know it's the wrong thing to do, but it's just, it's just me. It's just the way it's going to be. And he goes, well, again, he was emphasizing, it's bad business, George, bad business. It's just not good to do. And I said, well, I apologize to him, and he said, okay, if that's the way it's going to be. And he just hung the phone up, and I hung the phone up. So I guess maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from Pat Patterson, and he said WWF is going to make a tour of Japan, and they wanted to know if Akeem wanted to be on the tour, wanted to go on tour of Japan. They said, we'll pay you $8,000. And, and he said, if you go on tour of Japan, you can come back into the company and everything will be back to normal, no hard feelings, and you won't be punished in any way for, things that's happened or whatever. He said, this is your last chance, to get back into the company. And I just told him, I said, I'm tired of the travel. I don't want to get on another airplane, so I'm just going to have to turn you down. I appreciate the offer. I appreciate you calling me. But I turned it down, and that was the end of my World Wrestling Federation days.
You did have a match in '98 against Flash Flanagan, who's a friend of mine. What brought on that match?
Man, I called and I talked to Jim Ross, and asked him about, Jim Ross. I mean, he's a Jim Ross now. I'd worked with his man forever. And I said, I'd like to, is there, you got anything open or what, and Jim tells me, he says, well, the new rules is you have to send in a videotape of some of your matches, and we'll take a look at it. And I'm like, Jim, what do you want me to send in? My WrestleMania matches? What? I mean, I don't understand. It's just crazy. I said, you want me to send in videotape of me wrestling? Well, that's the new rules we have here, and he's trying to explain it. And I was like, I don't know. And then he goes, well, we got a TV taping. We'll bring you in for a tryout. I'm like, a tryout? I mean, come on, man. This is I've been in business for all these years, and I got to go to WWF as a tryout match. So, they offered to pay me, I don't know, $1,500. So, hey, that particular time, I'll take their money. So they flew me to Indianapolis, wherever it was, and had 2 matches. I worked against Flash, and I worked against one of the headbangers who I put over. I don't know which headbanger it was, but I put him over, and I went over on Flash. And of course, I didn't get the job, as you well know. So, but yeah, I had to go there and have a tryout match. Can you believe that?
Do you think that's them remembering you not doing the tour and just kind of fucking with you a little bit?
Oh, I'm sure. I thought that for the longest. Then I heard Sabu. I saw an interview with Sabu saying the same exact thing, that they called him up for a tryout match, and Sabu's like, a tryout match? What's that? He'd never heard of it, but maybe in my
interview with Sabu.
But maybe in my case it was that. But then, what was hard was, I was in the dressing room, and Road Warriors was in the dressing room. Both of them, Animal and Hawk, and they were like riding me hard about, oh, one man gang, he's got a tryout match. They was all laughing and whatever. One man gang, he's got a tryout match. He has to come up here and try out. And they was all riding me really, really super hard about it. So. It is what it is. I had the 2 little matches, took my money, went back home with the money, and they didn't have anything available for me.
And Flash told me, I don't know if you remember this, but before your match, Shawn Michaels came up to you guys and he's told you to squash Flash like squash Shawn.
Yeah. We remember back when I was in World Championship Wrestling in Texas, Shawn Michaels came into TV over there, before he was, Heartbreak Kid and all that big stuff like that. And I just beat the crap out of that dude. I mean, I just wore him out in, like 4 minutes and slammed him, gave him the big splash, and pinned him right in the middle. So, so he was like, I think he was telling Flash, do him like you did me, guy. Do him like you did me back in the days. I don't guess Michaels ever got over that.
And I get you beat him at WrestleMania IV too. You and Boss Man defeated the Rock.
I did.
That was a good match, actually.
That was a pretty decent match, for their size against our size, and there's a little trading card that came out, and it shows me pinning Shawn Michaels. I'm on top of him for the pinfall, and I'll see it at shows or whatever. People bring it up to have me autograph it, and I'll be like, hey, you know who that is, right? That's I'll tell them, you know who that is? They're like, who is that? I said, that's Shawn Michaels, Heartbreak Kid. By God, look at there. I'm pinning that man. 1, 2, 3. I pinned him. I pinned Shawn Michaels. So I always get a big joke out of that for whatever reason. So
another guy you pinned in Madison Square Garden was Bret Hart. Do you have any memories of that?
Ooh,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know, exactly, right? To be honest with you, Hannibal, I forgot all about that. And then somebody told me about it and said that, it's on YouTube. So I actually looked it up, and sure enough, there we were wrestling. I don't know how you forget matches, but I totally forgot that match. And sure enough, I mean, it shows me going over plain as day. So, I mean, I can't tell you anything about it because I don't even remember it happening, but it's there on video. So obviously it happened, and I got to go over on him too. So heck.
in Madison Square Garden, nonetheless. What was it like wrestling in there? That must have been special for you.
You know, it's not. I mean, I'm not gonna say it wasn't special. Of course, you know, if you're in the Garden, it's special. But I mean, to me, it was just, you know, once you got there and saw the place, it really wasn't that much to it. You know, I mean, his dressing rooms wasn't that nice and all that. So, but you know, to me, the biggest, you know, thrill for me wrestling someplace was my own little auditorium, Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium in my own little hometown. That was the biggest thrill for me, wrestling at an arena. Even though all the arenas I'd been through all my life, you know, the Garden, the Philadelphia Spectrum, the Boston Gardens, you know, Toronto at the Gardens, and all these big giant arenas. But you know, just to go home and say I'm actually, you know, I was in the same dressing rooms that I used to sit out there and watch all those wrestlers, you know, wrestle, you know, on Saturday nights here in Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium, to me was the biggest thrill in my life. You know, I know it sounds crazy, but that's just, you know, that's just the way it is for me.
And as far as your time with WCW, I guess after WWE, you went in, I think, when Bill Watts was running the company, who you had a history with?
No, Bill Watts wasn't there. Dusty was there.
Okay.
Dusty is the one that called me up. I'd been at home for, you know, a few months after WWF. You know, I left them, so I'd just been hanging out at the house, just doing family stuff that I didn't get to do before. Because of travel. So he just called me up and asked me, you know, would I be interested in coming in, you know, as one-man gang and work? And sure enough, I mean, why not? He started offering me $500 a night, you know, working night if I worked, which was, they were working full time, you know, 5, 6, 7 days a week. So, I mean, you had $500 a night, no matter what the house was. You know, it could have been 10 people in the crowd at that time, you know, at that particular time, they wasn't doing that great of business. So, you know, luckily, you know, with a guarantee like that, you know, you're pretty safe. So yeah, I took that deal right away. So I went in for him down there for the longest, you know, and then after, I don't know, it might have been 2 months, maybe 3 months, I don't know. But then he upped my pay to $750 per night, which was like, man, I didn't expect it. I didn't ask for it. I was happy at 500, but you know, I'm not going to turn it down and say, oh, no, Dusty, you don't have to pay me that. But, you know, I took it. Heck yeah. So, yeah, then it was $750 per night. Every night I appeared, whatever the house was. And then what happened there was I was doing, you know, I was all fine and dandy and everything was going good, one-man gang. And then they started, I don't know if people remember this guy, PN News. He was like a rapper, big, heavy set rapper dude.
Yeah, Yo Baby Yo or something like that.
There you go. But anyway, they booked me, you know, we did a little program and they booked me against him. And it was supposed to be Splash versus Splash, Big Splash versus Big Splash, because we both used that as a major finish. So we was at some, I don't know where we was at, Charleston, South Carolina, somewhere like that. And, you know, and I don't even know why, you know, but they said, you know, PN News is going over. We want PN News to catch the fall or the splash. Once he hits the splash, the match is over. But, you know, and I refused it. I said, no, I'm not, you know, I'm not letting PN News beat me. I mean, come on, man. Y'all got to be kidding me. Here it was, you know, that's my ego talking. I was just stupid. That was just the stupidest thing in the world, you know, to do that. I should have just, you know, it didn't mean nothing. Just let him catch the splash off of some stupid move, miss the turnbuckle or something. Let him splash me. Match is over. We go to the next town, whatever, you know, just do that. Keep getting my pay. But, you know, my ego took over and I got a big head, I guess. I don't know what happened, but I refused to do the finish. And so then Mike Graham was the agent and Mike called Dusty and Dusty called me and Dusty said, well, we're going to send you home. I can't have wrestlers, you know, refuse to do my finishes. And so they sent me home. He said, go home and take a few days off and I'll call you, you know. So I went home and took like, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 days. And Dusty called me at the house and said, if you'll come into TV, TBS TV or whatever it was then, WCW TV, and put PN News over on TV, national TV, we'll give you a job back and everything will go back to normal. Everything would just be the way it was before, the same pay, everything. And I refused to do it. I said, no, Dusty, I can't do that. Man, I can't go on TV and, do that, which was stupid on my part. I should have done it. I felt bad years later, and Dusty was like, I've always taken care of you and made sure you had a job to feed your family, which was true as could be. And, years later, I felt bad, for doing that, to him and but at that particular time, I just felt it wasn't the right thing for me to do. But, years later, when I was broke, then I thought, man, that was so stupid. Why didn't I just go put the dude over and get my job back and go right back to the way it was? But, history's history.
And PN News is best remembered for, I guess he was caught stealing in the dressing room or something, and he got a lot over that. Oh, you didn't hear about that?
No, I didn't. I don't keep up with nothing like that. The only thing I knew, I thought he was famous for being put in one of them scaffold matches.
No, I guess he had tons of heat. That's why his run didn't last very long. And once he left there because he was
here I am. I got to put him over, right? See, that ain't right, is it? Hannibal, tell me, that ain't right, is it?
Your vibe about him was correct. You wrestled Giant Gonzalez there, who Alfonso was telling us about. What was it like being in the ring with him?
It was, Hannibal, I don't want to say nothing bad against anybody, but trying to work against Giant Gonzalez was like pulling teeth. It was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. That man, he was a legit giant, but he was not made for professional wrestling. I'll just tell you that right now. The man was just, he was just awful at wrestling. He just punches, kicks. He was just not made to be a professional wrestler at all. Had no, wind at all. Within 5 minutes, he'd be so blowed up. He'd be gasping for air, just begging, slow down, or whatever. It was just horrible. It was just a horrible thing to try to go out there and work against the guy. The guy personally was super, super nice person, personally. But in the ring, no, thank you. And I ended up having to be programmed with him, and I did the best I could do. And, obviously some of those are not very good things to look at. But I did the best I could do with him.
I actually liked the gimmick that they gave you at that time with Kevin Sullivan having you in the chain and the straight jacket sometimes, and you're with Billy Jack Haynes as Black Blood. What did you think about that whole gimmick being part of Sullivan's stable?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was great. Sullivan, they came to me and came with the idea about it, and then. I got the goofy mask, S&M mask or whatever. I got that, and then he got the straight jacket. And then we was at a building. They found a darn dolly. Said, we're gonna roll you out on a dolly. And I was like, man, you sure you can hold that thing up? I don't want you to drop me about halfway out to the ring, So yeah, but he rolled me out, and we had to do I had to do the old screaming thing and act like I was totally insane the whole time, but, it worked. I guess it worked okay. It had the eye paint, kind of like the Alice Cooper look or whatever. And, it was different for me, that we did some kind of gimmick. I remember we did something with Dusty and that kid from Wonder Years where they had like this voodoo little doll, and they were poking the voodoo doll with the little pins, and it was like, I don't think this thing works. And they had me over on the, showing me on the side over there. And every time they poke the little voodoo doll, it looked like me. I'd be like, oh, God, then they'd poke me in the butt and I'd have to sell it, or poke me in the neck. I'd be like, oh, man. So, we did some goofy stuff like that. But, yeah, it was a trip being with Sullivan. That dude had some crazy ideas, and man, I tell you, it was something to be with him. That's for sure.
I think you're talking about Jason Hervey, who was dating Missy Hyatt at the time or something.
There you go. There you go. Good man. Good man. There you go.
And
You got all the information. I'm telling you, man. You're a fountain of information, Hannibal. That's for sure.
Well, you got to pick up something doing these interviews all the time. Matt Bourne is another guy you worked with there when he was Big Josh. He was known as very temperamental. Did he ever give you any issues?
Never, Hannibal. We had our matches and nothing ever came of it. I know. Well, if I'm not sure, I don't want to misspeak out of place, but I seen some video with him and Jim Duggan. I think if that's
Duggan talked to me about that. That was
okay.
That was stemming from some Mid-South heat, actually.
Okay, well, but me personally, no, I didn't have any trouble. And going back to what you said about Billy Jack is Blue Blood. I think was that it? Blue Blood, I believe, right? Black Blood. Sorry, Blue Blood was that other group.
Steve Regal and Bobby.
Yeah. There you go, man. You know you're wrestling, but Black Blood. I thought that was a great gimmick, And I mean, just to look at him, you would never. Me personally, unless you saw a tattoo or something, you'd never know that was Billy Jack Haynes. I mean, the outfit, and everything was just superb. I love that gimmick, So.
I told him the same thing. If that had gone longer, he really could have got over with that because he was a better heel than babyface.
Oh yeah, I believe so too. Yeah, for sure.
I think he blew out his knee doing that jump. Yeah. It was a dumb finishing move where he's jumping off the top rope, landing on his knees every night, and he ended up blowing out his knees. And
stay off them knees. That's the whole thing. And big guys, man. I don't understand big guys, man. They go to turnbuckles, do them big jumps off turnbuckles and stuff. Look what happened to Sid Vicious when he jumped off that turnbuckle, man. He spaghetti legged that leg turned around backwards. I can't even watch that now, man. That's so disgusting. It's pitiful.
And then Brock Lesnar, he tried to do that move once at the WrestleMania and almost broke his neck.
Oh man, yeah, shooting star, right?
Yeah, shooting star, yeah.
Oh, I mean, just missed by that much, breaking his neck. Holy cow!
And then you had another run in WCW, I think around '95, where you actually held the U.S. title. I guess the Heat was long gone by then, and who was at the contract?
Well, it was different people at that time. Dusty wasn't there. Jimmy Hart and Kevin Sullivan called me up for this one. I was working a regular shoot job as a security officer, for a like Pinkerton detective security, whatever. Just you go and sit around a place and just be a security guard all night long. I was doing that, so they just called me up out of the blue. I had no idea. They just called me up and said, "Hey man, we got would you be interested in coming down here and doing this and whatever?" And they offered and said, "This is what we'll pay you," which was, I think it was $7.50 again. So, I was just doing a little security gig for minimum wage. So, hey, why not? So I took their deal and went down there and in Nashville, Tennessee, that Japanese guy, I forget,
Sasaki or something like that. I'm not pronouncing it right, but
I don't know. But anyway, yeah. But he was the United States champion at that particular time, and then they wanted to get the title off of him, and they were going to put it on me or put it on anybody, I guess. But I just happened to be the one they was going to put it on. So after all the matches in Nashville, after the pay-per-view, whatever it was, him and I went out for like a end of the night match, and people had no idea what was going on, so we went out there and just had a short little match. And what they filmed me pinning him, but what they didn't film was, after the pin, he put his foot on the rope and the referee reversed it, and then he got the pinfall on me. But the the video showed me pinning him, so they gave me the United States title. So I became their champion for that a little bit. I mean, it's another notch on my resume, being the champion. What the heck?
And you feuded with Conan over that, who is one of the big Mexican legends. How did you like him?
Hannibal had Mexican style a little bit hard for me. I'm not a high flyer. I like to keep it on the ground, and I'm a pounder. I like to pound and kick and that kind of. I'm not a classic wrestler. I'm not an arm drag man. I don't know fireman carry from anything, So he still was working that Mexican style at that time, So it just didn't mesh very well, with what I was trying to do, and it just didn't work out. So I don't know what Monday night or whatever night. I guess it was a Monday night show. I show up at the building and they say, we're going to, you're going to lose tonight and let Conan get the title. Whatever, it didn't matter to me. So at that time, I'd got over my ego. I didn't care now. So I went ahead and, we had a little match and just did a little spot where I went to pick him up. I think from the outside to the inside, he was on the apron. I picked him up and he started shaking the rope like this or whatever. And I kind of teeter-tottered off balance, and he fell on top for a quick 1, 2, 3, and that's all history. After that, he got the title and went on about his business. Had a pretty decent career after that, thanks to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the head booker for AAA in Mexico now, which is one of the two big companies there. Did you ever wrestle Hulk Hogan in that WCW run when you were with the Dungeon of Doom?
I did wrestle him. One match. We had a match in Las Vegas, Nevada on Monday night TV, whatever it was, Nitro, whatever it was, and it was just basically just a job. I went out. I don't mean job, meaning that's what I had, but just a job match. I knew it was going. It was just a short, wasn't very long, maybe 6, 7 minutes, and put him over right in the middle with the leg drop, nothing spectacular out of it. No, I didn't get anything back. I didn't get nothing. So, and I was just on a little nightly deal, if I worked, I got paid at that time. But the problem was, they wasn't booking me that often, so it'd be lucky if I get a couple of bookings a week, so my pay really wasn't doing too well. So Terry Taylor he said, well, you need to go talk to Eric Bischoff about a contract. So I said, okay, I'm not very good at that kind of thing. I'm not a good talker. I'm not a good negotiator. I'm just not good at that. I'm just an old country boy. So, Eric was in his trailer at the place there, and I went and knocked on his door, went into his trailer, and, I introduced myself and whatever, but then I said, I would like to talk to you about, possibly getting on a contract here. I'm on a small nightly deal, but I'm just not making money. I would like to have a little contract, to take care of myself and my family. And, I just went out there and I put Hogan over for you guys right in the middle with no questions asked and no problems, and I'll do that for anybody, but I want to be taking care of myself. And he kind of looked at me all crazy, like, I don't know, man, like he got into almost like a fighting position, karate position. And he says, well, we don't do things like that in this company. And I got a little, kind of hot at him. And I said, what do you mean you don't do things like that? You got guys on contracts here making, $150,000 that can't lace their boots up, but you don't do things like that. I mean, I'm not asking to break the company. I don't want Sting money or Hogan money. I just want to be taken care of, just a contract. We don't do that here, but I'll tell you what, I'll talk to Kevin Sullivan about it and see what we can do. Now get out of here. So, you want to punch the dude right in the face, but what's that going to get you arrested, right? So, but I left and then, went home, and I never got a formal notice. I just wasn't booked anymore. So obviously, Eric Bischoff, I got word later that he didn't like the one-man gang gimmick. He didn't like, the way I wrestled or anything. So Yeah, so that was pretty much the end of that. He didn't even know I was in the company. I was in Atlanta catching. I had to fly from Baton Rouge, and then I go through Atlanta to go to wherever they were going on tour. We were all at the same little podium in Atlanta checking in, and he saw me standing there, and he comes up to me and goes, "One man gang?" Questioning it, one man gang. I said, "Yes." He says, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I told him, I said, "Well, I work for this company." And he goes, "What?" He was like all surprised. He says, "How long has that been going on?" And I told him, I was U.S. champion. What? He was totally shocked. He had no idea I even worked for the company. So that was the end of my career.
Your story is almost exactly the same as the one Kamala told me. He was on that same nightly deal, and then when he approached Bischoff about a contract because he was not making any money too, not being booked that often, Bischoff snapped off on him and he quit basically over that. So almost the exact same story as you. Yeah. But it's funny, some of the guys that were under contract that they hardly even used.
Exactly.
Like I recently,
guys, can't even lace their boots up correctly, and they making $150,000. It was just obvious. And he's telling me they don't do that, but yeah, they did do that with everybody. Basically, it's just that I just wasn't in the clique. That was the big thing. I wasn't in the Erich Bischoff clique, or I wasn't in the Hogan clique, or the Diamond Dallas Page clique. They all had cliques. If you was in one of their cliques, you could get the big you could get a decent contract and stick around for a couple of years. I wasn't a hangout type person, go to bars and hang out with them and all that. So I wasn't in the clique. So it just didn't they didn't want to use me.
Yet they had Ice Train under contract, who nobody remembers.
Exactly. There you go. That's what I'm saying. It's ridiculous. But
now
that's the way the wrestling business is, Hannibal. So everybody can't like you, no matter how nice a guy you are, so yeah. History, people say, well, would you have took a big contract? Well, heck yeah, I would have took a big contract. Anybody would. You'd be a fool not to. But I was never offered a big money contract like that. Never. I never had that opportunity. But if I was offered that, you better believe I would have took it.
You ended up doing a couple, more than a couple shots for ECW, wrestling guys like Rob Van Dam and Shane Douglas. Any memories about that run?
Man, ECW was a super place. All the guys were great, man. All the guys there were super great people, real courteous, real, showing respect, because I'd been around for so long or whatever, all of them were super guys. But, they started booking me with Van Dam, and we had a match somewhere. I don't even remember where it was, maybe around Boston area, somewhere at one of those towns I used to work at. But he was doing his crazy spin kicks. I don't know what happened, but I guess maybe I stepped into it. I'm not sure, but he spin kicked me and knocked me cold as a cucumber. I mean, I went out like the lights. Somebody, pulled a little switch on a light. I went out. Never been knocked out in my life. When I went down, all my weight went to one side and, on my right side, and kind of crushed my knee and everything. And the referee, later tells me, my eyes rolled back in my head, and Van Dam was, like standing there saying, "Get him up. I got to do my Van Daminator." That little kick he does off the turnbuckle into a chair or something. I got to do that. Get him up. I mean, I was out cold. And then he just pinned me. And then after the match, they rolled me out to the floor, and I don't even really remember getting back to the dressing room or whatever. But, that particular time, he didn't even, everybody come over to check on me except him. He didn't even come over to say, "Hey, man, I'm sorry about that," or, "Are you okay?" or anything I can do for you. Or he didn't even check, So years later, he apologized for it, but man, I mean, you at least go check on the man, right? Yeah, well. But other than that, everything. I worked with Sabu, got to work with Sabu, and that was like a, night off with him, even though he does all that crazy stuff too. But he hurts himself more than he hurts the people he's working. So, you know, I got to work with Tommy Dreamer, which was, you know, that was easy as could be, you know. So everybody else had an easy time with it except Van Dam. I just couldn't handle those crazy kicks.
Was Paul Heyman honest with you as far as pay went, because he was known for screwing around some people on pay, but you weren't a regular, so maybe you didn't have that problem?
Right. I never had no trouble. This is how it happened. I just happened to be in, they came to Baton Rouge here locally, and I saw that Fonzie, you know, he was going to be on the show as a, you know, managing or whatever. So I said, well, I'm going to go down and see Fonzie because I hadn't seen him in forever, you know, since Florida probably. So I went down to the arena here in Baton Rouge, and, you know, and I said, Fonzie, man, you know, I met up with him. We talked and had a good old time. I said, why don't you come to my house and stay at my house? You ain't got to pay for a hotel room. So he came home, you know, and stayed at the house. And the next day they were in Alexandria, which is about 60 miles or so from Baton Rouge. So him and I, you know, drove over to Alexandria to go to the show, and I went in the back, you know, and everybody was amazed. You know, they're all like whispering, hey, that's the one-man gang. That's the one-man gang, you know, or whatever, you know. Paul Lee, I'd known Paul Lee from, you know, back in WCW days and the Dangerous Alliance and all that. So I'd been around him, you know, a little bit. But he came to me, and at that particular time, they were doing the thing with Spike Dudley where he was like going over the bigger guys, you know, like Bam Bam and whoever else. He was doing that, you know, flying headlock thing, whatever they called it. I don't know, off the turnbuckle. But Paul Lee came to me, you know, and said, you still work? And I said, yeah, I still work. And he said, well, what would it take, you know, for you to go out here? You know, I'd pay you to work a match with Spike and, you know, whatever. And I said, well, you know, you give me a number, Paul. I don't want to give you a number. So Paul said, how about 500? And I said, hey, that's fine. You bought yourself a wrestler. So, you know, from then on, you know, he only worked like Friday, Saturday, and sometimes a Sunday show, but they would fly me to wherever I had to go. And, you know, and I'd work, mainly I was working with Tommy Rogers, you know, and I had, like I said, a few matches with Van Dam till he hurt me. Then I refused to work with him and worked a couple of matches with Dreamer and, you know, like that. I never really got to work any singles with Sandman or anybody like that. But Dudley boys, I got to take their finish, you know. I said, man, give me that finish. I want to take that thing. So they gave me, we did a thing with a big run in where they were in the ring, and I ended up taking their little 3D finish, whatever. So about killed me. But
was that the wildest dressing room?
Huh?
Was that the wildest dressing room you were ever a part of?
Man, it wasn't that bad. I don't know, you know, I'm like I say, man, I get to the, you know, I've always been this way. I get to the arena, I get me a little spot, and that's where I get dressed. I'll hang out with the guys, but I'm not really, you know what I'm saying? I'm not really running around checking on what guys are doing, or you know, if whatever they're doing is their business. I got my own business, you know. I'm just there to wrestle. I get dressed. That's all I'm there to do is wrestle. I'm not there to be involved in anything else. You know, I'll talk with the guys. I'm nice with guys. I'm personable, you know, just like anybody else. But past that, you know, I'm not going to go out with them. I'm not going to hang out with them, and I'm not going to drink with them or anything else. That's just my personality. I'm not that way. But how it ended in ECW was I was booked to go back in and work a show, and they had got me a ticket out of New Orleans, and supposedly got me a ticket now. But I went down to the airport, and when I got to the airport, there was no ticket there. So I don't know if, you know, he thought I was going to spend my own money for a ticket or whatever, but I wouldn't do it. And I just didn't. That was the end of it. They never tried to book me anymore after that. So, but money-wise, I never got stiffed on any. All the payoffs were correct. I mean, everything every time I worked, I was paid correctly. So I didn't have any trouble with that.
And the last time anyone saw you on a large scale was, of course, that gimmick battle royal at, I think it was WrestleMania 17, maybe.
It might have been. I'm not sure myself.
One of the fans will correct me if I'm wrong, but who called you about that, and how was that experience for you?
Well, I was when it originally started, I was out of the country. I was on a USO independent tour, with I had one of Samoans. I don't know which one. Samoans was there, and a couple other guys. Honky Tonk Man was on it with us, and we was on a USO little tour, hitting all the military bases all over the place, Hawaii and Guam, and we went to some little islands out there where they used to do the atomic explosions and junk like that, So we was all over the place on a Pacific tour. So when I got back, when I called home, and my wife said Howard Finkel had called. So as soon as I got in from the tour, I called Howard Finkel, and they said, Howard, like, George, Vince wants to know if you would be interested in coming in for a gimmick battle royal at, whatever WrestleMania was, like you said, 17, I believe it was. But then I said, he says, he wants you to come in as Akeem. And I said, Howard, I've lost a lot of weight. I'm not, that Akeem outfit was measured at 400 pounds, and I'm weighing in about 320 right now. So it just like hangs on me like loose skin. So I can't be Akeem. We don't. And there's not enough time to have Akeem outfit made. So, and he said, well, let me talk to Vince and I'll get back to you, And so, like, I don't know, it might have been a day or two later, Howard Finkel calls me back and goes, George, Vince said it would be okay if you come in as one man gang. That's fine. He wanted Akeem, but he'll let you come in as one man gang. And I said, okay, if that's fine, I'll do that. And that's how that came about. And went in there, had a great time. We was treated with respect. It was all, I was taken care of. My family was taken care of. We was put up and, in a nice hotel, and, so it was all good. And, I guess I took a pretty decent bump over the top rope. And when I got back after the show, Jim Ross was there, and Jim was like, George, you look like you did pretty good out there. I said, yeah, I guess it was okay. It was short, but he goes, would you be interested in anything? And I said, well, yeah, why not? And then later on, I heard that they were in serious talks about bringing me in as their to win the hardcore title, but they disbanded it before, that came about. So, well, there were another shot at the WWF, right? So
that's too bad. That would have been really cool. You also spent some time in WWC Puerto Rico, which may have been the last full-time territory you worked in. I always had pay issues when I wrestled there. I know they treated the stars differently, but how was your time there?
I didn't have any trouble at all there. I mean, like, I know I say that about everything, but, honestly, I didn't have any trouble. Dutch Mantel, Dirty Dutch is the one that set it up and brought me in, and maybe he had something to do with making sure I was taken care of. But it was just I'd always heard horror stories about Puerto Rico, about the fans and whatever, and then of course the episode with Bruiser Brody from years before. So you always have a little hesitancy about it. But once I got in there, it was just like working anywhere else, basically. I mean, yeah, the fans were a little more rowdier. I mean, they didn't allow ringside seats, and the fans would bring batteries in and chunk them at you and things like that. But other than that, I mean, wrestling-wise, it was pretty much basically the same. And I was mainly, most of the time, programmed against Carlos or one of, or his kid, the one that eats the apple, went to eat the apple or whatever.
Carlito, Caribbean.
Yeah, worked against him, but mainly Carlos. So it was pretty easy for me, it was just a lot of blood in it. I know you had a big issue with Abdullah the Butcher, but I worked him over there, and, we had quite a few matches, a lot of blood, and I've been checked since then. So my blood's all clean. So I didn't catch any hepatitis or anything.
Yeah. The issue with the difference with Abdullah and I is, he actually cut me with a blade he had used on himself. So that makes it more dangerous than, like, if two people are bleeding from small cuts and it's flowing outwards, compared to if someone like does that and then sticks it right into you. But he may not have had it then either, because in 2012 we got his test and he had it for 10 years by 2012. So I don't know if you wrestled him before or after, but yeah, I'm glad you didn't have anything.
Yeah, I guess I got lucky because every time him and I worked, you knew it was going to be a bloodbath for sure. I mean, I was basically on the way out to the ring. He was, using his thumb, hammering his forehead to get started. So by the time he got to the ring, he was already bleeding. So then not 5 minutes later, he had the fork out, pounding me in the head. So, 5 minutes later, I'm bleeding, and it was just a madhouse.
And also, when he wrestled me, I was young in the business. So, like, obviously, he's not going to cut a veteran.
No, I never allowed anybody to do that to me. I've heard of guys doing it. I think way back in the day, J.J. Dillon did a few guys on TV and stuff, but I wasn't taking any chances with anybody. I don't trust people that much. I do it myself because I know I know exactly how I got it set up and what to do, but I ain't trusting nobody with that. I mean, if you really think about what we were doing anyway, it was kind of insane anyway. We were kind of probably be put in the mental institute. I mean, there are people in the mental institute for doing that, right? So
yeah. I remember you against Abdullah from that infamous Heroes of Wrestling pay-per-view. You were one of the few passable matches on that show because it ended up just being like one of the craziest shows ever. Jake was drunk, I think. There was so much insanity there. What did you think about that event?
Oh, yeah. That was, not knowing it at the time, but now, years later, that's another notch on my resume for being on one of the known as one of the worst pay-per-views ever in the history of professional wrestling. So, I got to appear on that. Yeah, him and I worked that one, and the guy, whoever was running the show, they had told him ahead of time, they might be a little blood, with him and Abdullah, which is natural. And then when we started bleeding, the guy went crazy. He's like, man, you said a little blood. It was bleeding all over the place and, whatever. And then what they wanted Abdullah to just drop the big bionic elbow thing, his Abdullah elbow, and beat me right in the middle. And he refused to do it. So, I always give props to Abdullah for that. I would have done it. I mean, it wasn't no big deal, but, I always gave him props for that.
I'll tell you the real reason he probably said no. Do you know why? He can't get up. Once he goes down, he's not mobile. And he can't even walk anymore. But because the times that I wrestled him too, he'd rather always do a double DQ or a double count.
Yeah, exactly.
Because once he hits the ground, it takes him a lot of energy. He's got to roll to the ropes and pull himself up because his hip was shot, and he was so heavy. So he may not have said that just for you, just to let you know.
Well, now I don't feel so good about it.
The last guy I'll ask you about is the Undertaker. I heard you say in another interview that he would have been the one guy you really wanted to wrestle if you could have wrestled.
That's about everybody, right? I mean, I would have loved to have some matches with him in my prime, when I was younger. But, I believe, if I would have stayed there just another month maybe, because he came in at the Survivor Series and I left like 1 month before the Survivor Series. He came in right at that next Survivor Series, so 1990. So, we wouldn't have had any real matches. Of course, they would have just, it would have just been me putting him over basically like all the guys did at that time, so we wouldn't have had no real matches. If he would have, maybe a few years later, as a one-man gang or something like that, if we would have met somewhere else in another, territory or maybe another time, we probably could have had a decent match. But at that particular time, I believe it would just been a squash match, me just putting him over, just like the guys did. But, it is what it is.
Now, of course, they had his retirement ceremony last night on Survivor Series. Do you think he's really going to stay retired, or are they going to need him again and offer him a couple million and we'll see him back in the?
Well, I don't know how many times did Terry Funk retire. So I don't know. I can't give you an honest answer on that. I mean, if they approach somebody with the right numbers, I believe anybody would step in the ring, right?
Oh yeah, I think so. Because what Shawn Michaels came back, Ric Flair, Mick Foley, almost everyone. It's rare to find someone that actually stays retired.
I mean, who knows? We know only time will tell. We don't. I don't know myself,
Are
But I
you
did. I'll
retired?
tell you, huh?
Are you
Pardon me?
Are you
Oh yeah,
retired?
yeah. I've been out of the business for a long time. Health reasons. I just have just some health reasons with my ticker, the old heart, and things like that. So yeah, my body just quit on me, man. I blew my back out and knees are gone. So all them years of bopping around in the ring at a really, really heavy weight, 400 pounds, that takes a lot of toll. And a lot of them rings aren't bouncy rings. When we first got to the WWF, them rings were like concrete. I mean, it was like it'd probably be softer to take a bump on the concrete than in the ring. They had them rings, man, them rings were hard. I don't know what the deal was with them, like boxing rings.
How was your time in Memphis? You wrestled for USWA for a little while.
Yeah, that's I was one of the not against the guys, but just the place itself was horrible. I just hated it. When I first went in, I was already, using one man gang gimmick, and they wanted me to go back to being using Crusher Broomfield because from my old days in ICW, the TVs would cross over and would play there, and I was Crusher Broomfield. So they, Jerry Lawler and them said, go back to using the Crusher Broomfield name. So that's what I did, and no good at all. About starved to death. It was just god awful. I mean, it was just a terrible experience. And what really broke the straw, I guess, was I went to a town. I was actually booked. I mean, my name was on the booking sheet. So I drove this town. I don't even remember. It might have been 100 miles, 200 miles, whatever it was. But I drove there to work, and I was getting dressed in the dressing room, and whoever ran the show, I don't know who the promoter was, whoever he was, and he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm booked on the show. I'm here to work." He says, "You're not on this show." And I had the booking sheet, so I pulled the booking sheet out and showed him my name. I said, "Right there's my name. I'm booked on the show." He said, "Well, you're not working here. I don't care what that sheet says. You're not working. So you may as well get dressed and, just get on out of here." So, I'm not a violent type person. I'm not, a lot of guys are, rip his eyeball out or something, but I'm just not that way. So, I just got dressed. I said, "Oh, whatever." I just got dressed and went out the back door. And when I went out the back door, Coco Beware was standing around in the back area, and he said, "What's going on, man? What you doing? You leaving?" I said, "Well, the dude promoter guy said I wasn't working tonight, and he told me to leave. And I'm booked on the card." And he said, "Well, I know you didn't get nothing for gas or anything." I said, "I didn't get nothing." And he said, "Well, hold on one second." So Coco Beware went back inside, and I don't know if he came back with his own money or if he came back with the promoter giving money, but he gave me $20. He said, "Here, this will help you with your gas." So I never forgot that years later. That's pretty cool of Coco. He didn't know me from nobody. You know what I'm saying? So I always thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a good story about Coco. Do you have a favorite match of your career? You've had so many legendary matches.
Whew. Hannibal, that's a hard one to say, but some of my favorite people I worked with, of course, was Bruiser Brody. Dusty was always a favorite to work with. Hacksaw Jim Duggan was always great to work against. Anybody that could give you a good fight, that you could just fist to cuff it out with. And I mean, I was used on the card mainly just you knew it was going to be a brawl. I wasn't booked on the card for wrestling. You wouldn't go see any fancy Dan, arm drags or wrist locks or chin locks. I was mainly just used as a fighter, because you that's what it was. You booked on the card coming against Duggan or whoever. It was just going to be a fight. So those were the type guys that I felt most comfortable with, guys that I could fight against, like Mulligan and those type guys like that was always just big brawlers, and that's what I really enjoyed doing, was just brawling, getting all bloody and nasty and spit and snot hanging out my nose. That's when I felt my most comfortable.
That's what I like too, even though I know how to technical wrestle. For some reason, the brawling is the fun style. Have you ever, or do you have any opinion of Bruce Pritchard? I've heard him talk about you in recent years here and there.
Yeah. Well, I just don't. I mean, I don't have anything bad to say against him. He just, when I called about, after my, quote, tryout match, he was the one I talked to. He said that we don't have anything for you, so, but he does what he has to do, I guess. I guess he's got a pretty good position with him now, and whatever. He's got his nice, I assume he's still doing his nice little radio show, whatever, but, good for him. I'm happy for anybody who can still be making a living at professional wrestling, like you, Hannibal. Look at you. You're making a living at professional wrestling still. So, it's all good to me.
Bruce is actually the head writer for WWE right now again, too. I don't know if you know that, but now you do.
Wow.
He works.
That's crazy, That's insane to me, all them years, and then he gets right back in there, right?
I think the radio show is what got him back relevant again, and then got him in WWE's good books. Now,
right.
I don't think anyone's going to argue you deserve to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. What do you think the reason is they haven't put you in yet? Because they put Abdullah in, and he never even wrestled for WWE. You actually were one of the main characters of WWE during some of their peak years.
Yeah, I don't know, Hannibal. That's a hard one to really give you an honest answer to. We know it's all kind of political behind the scenes and whatever, but it is what it is. If they call me up and say, would you want to, we'd like to give you a ring and give you a nice little payday, would you come in? Yeah, for sure. I would be there. I'm not going to turn it down, but they, like Slick keeps telling me, they've had. Since we left there, it's been 30 years. They've had 30 years they could have put us in a Hall of Fame, so if it happens, it happens. Like I say, I would still take it. I wouldn't turn it down, but, I don't believe it's going to happen. It's just all political thing, maybe he still holds a grudge because I walked out the company. I don't know.
And as far as wrestling these days, it's not quite as popular as it used to be. WWE is still popular. They have all the old footage. They do interviews like this on their own network and stuff. But what do you think would have to happen in wrestling for there to be another boom period? Because you don't see the T-shirts anymore when you're out in the town. The kids aren't watching it as much. A lot of the adults watch MMA instead of wrestling. Is there anything that could be done in your opinion?
I don't know, Hannibal. I think the good old days, like I said, I was lucky. I was really lucky to be during the era that I am, because I would never survive in today's wrestling world. Like I said, if you give me a script to say something, I'll just quit. And as memorize a whole match, I just quit. I just couldn't do it. Even my style wouldn't fit nowadays. Nowadays it's 27 finishes, 15 flips off the top, I don't know how many over the top rope. And, I don't think it'd ever be the same. Once you for sure 100% tell everybody it's scripted, I believe it's all over with. That's just my opinion. I believe it's, you still gonna have wrestling fans, but once they know it's scripted, it just doesn't have the same feel anymore. That's mainly why I don't keep up with the product at all anymore.
They even break kayfabe now in the build-up to pay-per-views prior to matches. They'll go in the news and talk about how they're all friends and they love telling stories and so forth. So that doesn't really make people want to go out and buy tickets, but they're all on guaranteed salaries now, so they don't have to worry about having to draw money for them.
Exactly. I'm gonna tell you, Hannibal, back in Mid-South days, we wasn't even allowed the heels or bad guys, if you want to say that. We wasn't allowed to go in a restaurant if he had some baby faces or a good guy and the baby face, was in there. We wasn't allowed to go in there. Same with a club or a bar. We wasn't allowed to even go in the same places that they were allowed to go. And Bill used to say, if you get in a fight in a bar or anywhere else, if you get in a real altercation, you better win it. Because if you don't win it, you don't have a job anymore. So, I mean, that's just the way, back in our day, back in those days, that's what people bought tickets because they believed it, No, you would never somebody would say it was scripted or anything. I mean, that was unheard of.
How did you end up in Louisiana? You just liked it there from your UWF days and decided to get a place there, or are you married to someone from there?
Exactly. That's how I got here. My wife is from Louisiana. I'm from South Carolina, or really originally I am from Chicago, maybe not Halstead Street, but I was actually born in Chicago. I lived there until I was 5 years old, and went to Spartanburg, South Carolina. So that's why I always say Spartanburg. But yeah, it was just through that, my wife's family was all here, and I didn't have any family to worry about anywhere. So, I've been here ever since. So that's where, that's how it happened.
And is there anything you'd like to say to the fans? I really would like to thank you for giving us over 3 hours now and really going in depth.
You got a lot of editing to do.
Well, the fans are going to appreciate this because there's not a lot out there of you on the internet. So now at least we got a good amount. And I'm sure we could have you back again down the road even and cover more. But I really appreciate your time.
There's probably more to cover, that's for sure. But, get your interview with Slick. I'm sure he's got all kinds of stuff. I mean, he probably knows a lot more than I do about things that went on in the WWF and other places. Let me give myself a little. Let me plug my shirt here, man.
Yes.
Take a look at my shirt. You can people there. Let me try to get it straightened a little bit. People can order my shirt right here. You can order one of these, a one-man gang T-shirt. Got the old school posters in the background and all that of some of my matches and stuff like that. So you can order that. Just send me a email at my email address. I'll take it on my email. OMG Akeem, all lowercase. OMG Akeem. OMG Akeem at gmail.com. So send me, if you want to buy one, send me an email. Tell me your size, blah, 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 blah. You know how the routine works. $20. So we'll do that. There you go. Good deal.
I put it right up on the screen for those people that want to reach out. I'm sure you'll do the 8x10s if they want one.
Oh yeah. I got 8x10s. If you want a nice autograph, you get that. Yeah, for sure. I got things like that I can sell. I'm not a big merchandise. I'm not really on here hawking a lot of merchandise. I don't have no website or nothing like that. I have no social, whatever it's called. I don't have anything, out there. No Facebook, YouTube, nothing. So what's the one with the little bird?
Well, there's going to be a lot of you on YouTube now because I'm probably going to put up like 5 clips of this before the full interview. So when people search your names, they're all going to pop up. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. As I call you Hannibal, I don't even use, I always like to shoot names. I don't want to use a shoot name. I like working names. Hannibal. I like that. Hannibal.
I actually prefer to be called Hannibal, actually.
Are you, now let me get this right. Are you known as the Death Dealer or something like that?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I get it right. Hannibal the Death Dealer.
Billy Graham gave me that name.
That is a vicious name.
Well, we would have actually had good matches together, I think.
You think so? You like the brawling and a little stiff work too?
Yes.
Oh yeah. We would have been fit right together. It'd been like Legos pieces putting together. We'd been perfect. So hey, I appreciate you having me on your YouTube channel. And how's the TV show going?
Oh, it's going great. We got over 100. Oh, the TV show, we had the first show last week, and it had very
All
good
right.
feedback. So it's only going to
So
get
is
better as
it
time
a
goes on.
TV show called Hannibal TV also?
It's called the Hannibal TV show.
The Hannibal TV show? Good. Is it a like a event like this, a live, a recorded event, or is it?
For now, it's me and three guests. But once COVID ends, it comes from Toronto, and they're on full lockdown there. Once that
Right.
ends, it will be in the studio there. I will have
Good.
us in the studio there.
Congratulations, man. I hope it leads to bigger things for you.
Thank you. I also have a wrestling company here called Great North Wrestling, but we're not allowed to run events right now, anyways. But we do pretty well here with our wrestling company.
Good deal, man. You're into all kind of stuff, man. You got a wrestling company, you got YouTube, Hannibal TV, you got another Hannibal TV. You got all kind of stuff going on, man. You a entrepreneur.
Exactly. You got to make money in this world. To close this interview off, I was wondering, could you give us a little one-man gang promo with the Moose call to end this interview? Because I'm sure the fans.
One-man gang. Who you want me to promo on? You want me to promo on you?
Me, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna promo on Hannibal. Hannibal the Death Dealer, the one-man gang is coming for you, and you have nothing you can do because you're a punk, and I'm the punk slapper, and I'm gonna slap your face, Hannibal. You are nothing. I do what I want to do. I'm the one-man gang. I walk where I want to walk. I talk when I want to talk, and nobody says otherwise, Hannibal. And when I step into the ring with you, it's going to be nothing but a fight. It ain't going to be no fancy Dan wrestling match. It's going to be some blood. You're going to lose a couple of teeth. I might lose a tooth, but I don't care, Hannibal, because I just want to get my hands on you. I've had enough of your stuff, Hannibal the Death Dealer, and it's time to take you out. The one-man gang, the 747 is coming, looking for you. Woo!